when kissing a beggar means war with an alpha king. Tonight, Lyra Vance will either be claimed by a brutal warlord who breaks his brides, or she'll break every law her pack holds sacred. In a world where alphas choose their mates in blood-soaked ceremonies, one desperate kiss changes everything. But the ragged stranger she grabbed to escape her fate? He's no beggar. He's something far more dangerous. And now, with assassins closing in and a kingdom on the brink of collapse, Lyra's reckless gamble might just save them all, or destroy everything. Stay until the end to see how one kiss topples an empire. Like and comment what city you're watching from. The torches burned so hot, Lyra could taste ash on her tongue. She stood in the third row of unmated females, shoulders locked, jaw tight, trying like hell not to let anyone see her hands shaking. Around her, girls primped and preened, adjusting the ceremonial white silk wraps that marked them as unclaimed. They giggled. They whispered about which alpha might choose them, like this was some kind of fucking prize. Lyra wanted to vomit. "You look green," muttered Senna, the girl beside her. Tall, willowy, with honey-colored hair that caught the firelight. She'd been Lyra's friend once, back when they were children who didn't know any better. "Try smiling. You'll fetch a better match if you don't look like you're about to bolt." "I am about to bolt." Senna's laugh was soft, pitying. "Don't be stupid. Where would you even go?" "Nowhere." That was the answer, and they both knew it. The Thornridge Pack controlled everything for 300 miles in every direction, mountains to the east, desert to the west, and nothing but wasteland beyond. Running meant dying alone in the wild, assuming the trackers didn't drag you back first. The arena roared with voices. 500 pack members packed into the stone amphitheater, tier after tier of faces lit by the ring of massive braziers that turned the night air into a furnace. At the center stood the claiming stone, a flat slab of obsidian worn smooth by generations of ceremonies just like this one. Lyra's stomach churned. "First selection begins!" The overseer's voice boomed across the space, magically amplified. He was an ancient alpha with a face like cracked leather, dressed in ceremonial black. "Alphas, step forward and claim your mates according to rank." The crowd erupted in cheers. From the opposite side of the arena, the alphas emerged. 30 of them, maybe more, each one radiating dominance so thick it made the air feel heavy. They wore no shirts, just leather pants and boots, their chests marked with ritual scars that declared their kills, their victories, their right to stand here tonight. Leading them was Gareth Kane. Lyra's blood turned to ice. He was massive, 6.5 feet of scarred muscle, with a face that might have been handsome if it wasn't so cruel. His eyes swept across the rows of females like a butcher evaluating meat. 3 wives already, the rumors said. All 3 broken within a year. One had tried to run. They'd found her body in the woods, throat torn out. "Shit," Senna breathed. "He's looking this way. Don't make eye contact." Lyra kept her gaze locked on the ground, heart hammering so hard she thought her ribs might crack. "Maybe he'll... Lyra Vance!" Her name cut through the noise like a blade. The arena went silent. "No, no, no, no." "Lyra Vance," the overseer repeated, consulting the scroll in his gnarled hands. "Step forward. You have been selected by Alpha Gareth Kane." Every eye turned toward her. Lyra couldn't move. Her legs had turned to stone. Around her, girls shuffled away, creating a gap that left her exposed, spotlighted by firelight and 1,000 stares. "Move!" someone hissed behind her. Senna's hand pressed against her back. Not supportive, but pushing. "Go. Don't make this worse." Lyra's feet moved on their own, carrying her forward through the parted crowd. Each step felt like wading through deep water. Her pulse roared in her ears, drowning out everything except the sound of her own ragged breathing. Gareth waited at the claiming stone, arms crossed, a smile playing at the corner of his mouth. She stopped 10 feet away. "Closer," he said. His voice was gravel and smoke, the kind that made you think of things breaking in the dark. Lyra didn't move. His smile widened. "I said closer, little Omega." "I'm not an Omega." The words came out harder than she intended. "I'm Beta rank." "Same difference." Gareth uncrossed his arms and took a step toward her instead, closing the distance in one casual stride. Up close, he smelled like blood and leather and something else, something sharp and wrong that made her wolf recoil inside her chest. "You're mine now. That's all that matters." The crowd cheered again, approving. Lyra's mind raced. Protocol said she had to accept, had to stand there while he placed his mark on her throat in front of everyone, binding them permanently according to pack law. After that, she'd belong to him. Property. A thing to be used and discarded when he got bored. Her gaze darted sideways, searching for what? An exit? There were guards at every entrance. Her parents somewhere in the crowd, probably relieved their difficult daughter was finally someone else's problem. Then she saw him. At the very edge of the arena, half hidden in shadow, where the torchlight didn't quite reach, stood a figure that didn't belong. Ragged clothes, dirt-smeared face, posture bent and defeated, like he'd wandered in from the wasteland and no one had bothered to kick him out yet. A beggar. The idea hit her like lightning. Well? Gareth's hand reached for her throat. Let's make this official. Lyra moved. She twisted away from him, ducking under his arm, and ran. Not toward the exits. They'd catch her before she made it 3 steps. Instead, she sprinted toward the edge of the arena, toward the shadows, toward the one person here who couldn't possibly have any claim on her. The beggar looked up, startled, as she barreled toward him. Sorry, Lyra gasped, and then she grabbed his filthy collar with both hands and kissed him. The arena exploded. Shouts. Screams. Someone roared her name in fury, probably Gareth. The beggar went rigid under her grip, completely frozen, his lips cold against hers. Lyra didn't care. She just needed this moment, this one reckless gamble to count. Ancient law said the first bond sealed the claim. She pulled back, breathing hard, and met the beggar's eyes for the first time. They weren't the eyes of a broken man. They were sharp, calculating, the kind of gray that reminded her of storm clouds before they opened up and drowned everything below. For one heartbeat, she saw something flicker there, surprise maybe, or recognition, before his expression smoothed into something carefully neutral. Girl, he said quietly, his voice far steadier than it should have been. What the hell did you just do? Before she could answer, a hand closed around her arm like a vice and yanked her backward. Gareth's face was purple with rage. You fucking... Don't touch her! The beggar's voice cut across Gareth's snarl, soft but absolute. The bigger alpha paused, looking genuinely confused for a second. Then he laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. You think you have a say, vagrant? Get the fuck out before I break your spine! The beggar didn't move, didn't even blink, just stood there, meeting Gareth's fury with an expression so calm it was unsettling. She kissed me, he said simply. By law, that makes her mine. The crowd's roar intensified, half of them shouting for blood, the other half demanding clarification from the overseer, who looked like he'd swallowed a hornet. Gareth's grip tightened on Lyra's arm, making her gasp. Law doesn't apply to trash, she's mine. The scrolls declared it. The scrolls declare intent. The beggar took a single step forward, and something about the movement made Gareth's hand twitch. But the bond declares reality. She chose me. That's final. You're fucking dead? Enough! The overseer's voice boomed across the arena, magically amplified to a volume that made the stones vibrate. Silence crashed down like a falling hammer. The old alpha descended from his platform. Scroll still clutched in one withered hand, his face carved from pure displeasure. He stopped between Gareth and the beggar, looking at each in turn before his gaze settled on Lyra. Explain yourself, girl. Lyra's mouth was dry as sand. The law says... I know what the law says. The overseer's eyes were black and pitiless. I'm asking why you would spit on tradition and dishonor your selected mate by throwing yourself at a vagrant. Because I'd rather die than belong to him. The words came out before she could stop them, raw and honest and probably suicidal. Gareth snarled, You little... Quiet! The overseer held up one hand and Gareth actually obeyed, though his whole body vibrated with suppressed violence. The old alpha turned to the beggar. And you, state your name and rank. The beggar met his stare without flinching. I'm nobody, just a man passing through. No rank means no claim. Under pack law, the beggar interrupted, his voice still quiet but carrying a weight that made several nearby guards shift uncomfortably. The bond is sealed by contact initiated by the female. Rank is irrelevant. She chose. That's the end of it. The overseer's jaw worked silently for a moment. Around them, the crowd's murmur grew into a rumble of confused outrage. Someone shouted, "He's right! The old laws don't mention rank!" Someone else, "This is bullshit! Gareth was chosen first!" "Order!" The overseer's voice cracked like a whip. "There will be order, or I'll clear this arena by force!" The crowd subsided into sullen muttering. The old alpha looked at Lyra again, and this time there was something almost like pity in his ancient eyes. "Girl, do you understand what you've done? Gareth Kane is a respected warrior. This vagrant is nothing. No name, no pack, no future to offer you. If you accept this bond, you'll be cast out with him. No protection, no family, nothing." Lyra's throat was so tight she could barely force words through it. "Better than being his." Gareth made a sound like a wounded animal. The overseer sighed, long and heavy, then turned to address the crowd. "By the old laws, the laws that predate even the Thornridge Pact, a bond initiated by the female cannot be broken once contact is made. The claim is valid." Chaos erupted again. Gareth lunged forward, and it took 3 guards to hold him back, his roars of fury echoing off the stone walls. Other alphas were shouting, demanding explanations, calling for the law to be changed on the spot. Through it all, the beggar remained perfectly still, his gray eyes locked on Lyra. She couldn't read his expression, didn't know if he was angry or amused or something else entirely. All she knew was that she'd just tied her fate to a complete stranger, and there was no going back. The overseer raised both hands, calling for silence that took a full minute to achieve. When he finally spoke again, his voice was exhausted. "Lyra Vance, you are bonded to this man by your own choice. Take him and leave the arena. The ceremony will continue without you." "This isn't over," Gareth snarled, still being restrained by guards. His eyes found Lyra's across the space, and the promise in them was clear: pain, suffering, revenge. "You hear me, girl? This isn't fucking over." The beggar moved then, positioning himself between Lyra and Gareth with a subtlety that might have looked accidental if you weren't paying attention. His hand, rough, calloused, surprisingly warm, closed gently around Lyra's wrist. "Come on," he murmured, "before this gets worse." Lyra let him guide her toward the nearest exit, her legs shaking so badly she nearly stumbled. The crowd parted around them, faces twisted with disgust or shock or morbid curiosity. She caught sight of her mother in the 3rd tier, hands pressed to her mouth, looking horrified. No going back. No going back. No going back. The thought repeated in her head like a drumbeat as they passed through the stone archway and into the cool darkness beyond the arena. Behind them, the overseer's voice rose again, calling forward the next selection, trying to salvage what was left of the ceremony. They walked in silence through a series of narrow corridors lit by guttering torches. Lyra's mind spun uselessly, unable to process what she'd just done. She'd destroyed her life, burned every bridge, tied herself to a stranger who... She stopped walking. The beggar turned, one eyebrow raised in question. "Who are you?" Lyra demanded. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "Really? Because you didn't react like some random vagrant back there. You knew the law. You stood up to Gareth like you weren't afraid of him at all, so who the hell are you?" For a long moment, he just looked at her. Then slowly something shifted in his expression, the careful blankness falling away to reveal something sharper underneath. "Someone who wasn't supposed to be found," he said quietly. "And you just made that a lot more complicated." Before Lyra could respond, footsteps echoed from somewhere ahead in the corridor, fast. Multiple sets of boots hitting stone. The beggar's entire posture changed in an instant, from relaxed to coiled, like a spring compressed to its breaking point. His hand moved to his hip, reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. "Shit," he breathed. "They're already moving." "What? Who's moving? What are you—" "Listen to me very carefully." He gripped both her shoulders, forcing her to meet his eyes. "When I tell you to run, you run. Don't look back. Don't stop. Head for the eastern gate, and don't trust anyone who tries to stop you. Understand?" "No, I don't understand any of—" The footsteps got closer. Lyra could hear voices now, low and urgent. The beggar's jaw tightened. "Fuck. No time. Stay behind me." "Behind you? What?" 6 men rounded the corner, moving fast. Not guards. These wore dark leather without insignia, faces covered by cloth masks. Assassins. The lead one stopped when he saw them, hand already reaching for the blade at his belt. "There," he said, voice muffled by the mask. "The girl. Take her alive. Kill the vagrant." Lyra's blood froze. The beggar pushed her behind him with one arm, his other hand empty but raised in a fighting stance that suddenly looked very, very practiced. "Last chance," he said, and Lyra wasn't sure if he was talking to her or the assassins. "Walk away." The lead assassin laughed and drew his blade. Then everything went to hell. The beggar moved like nothing Lyra had ever seen, not with the raw power of an alpha, but with a precision that was somehow more terrifying. He closed the distance to the first assassin in half a heartbeat, catching the man's knife hand at the wrist and twisting with a motion so sharp Lyra heard bones snap. The assassin screamed. The beggar didn't slow. He used the broken man as a shield, turning to intercept the second attacker's blade with the first man's body. Then he ripped the knife free from the dying man's grip and drove it up under the second assassin's ribs in one fluid motion. 3 seconds. 2 men down. The remaining 4 hesitated, suddenly unsure. "Run," the beggar said to Lyra, not looking back at her. His voice was perfectly calm. Now. Lyra couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't process what she was seeing, this ragged stranger fighting like a trained killer, like someone who'd done this 1,000 times before. The third assassin lunged. The beggar sidestepped, letting the man's momentum carry him past, then kicked out sideways with brutal efficiency. The assassin's knee bent the wrong way with a wet crunch, and he went down shrieking. "I said run, goddammit!" This time, Lyra's body obeyed. She turned and bolted back the way they'd come, heart in her throat, the sounds of combat echoing behind her. Steel on steel, grunts of effort, a wet, choking sound that made her stomach heave. She burst back into the main corridor, gasping, and nearly collided with a figure emerging from a side passage. Senna. Her former friend grabbed her arm, eyes wide with something that looked like fear but felt wrong. "Lyra, thank God. Come on, there's a safe room this way." "No." Lyra yanked her arm free, every instinct screaming danger. The beggar's words echoed in her head. "Don't trust anyone who tries to stop you." "I'm going to the eastern gate." "What? Don't be stupid. There are—" "Let go of me." Senna's grip tightened, nails digging in. "You don't understand. They want you. If you run, they'll just—" Lyra punched her. It wasn't a great punch. She'd never been trained to fight, but desperation added force to it. Her fist connected with Senna's jaw, snapping the taller girl's head to the side. Senna stumbled, releasing her, shock written across her face. "You were in on it," Lyra breathed, the realization hitting her like cold water. "You knew they were coming for me." Senna touched her bleeding lip, and when she looked up, all pretense of friendship was gone. "You stupid bitch. You could have just accepted Gareth, could have made this easy. But no. You had to grab some fucking vagrant and ruin everything." "What are you talking about?" "The ceremony was rigged." Senna's smile was ugly. "Gareth was supposed to claim you, break you, make an example of what happens to girls who ask too many questions about pack business. But then you went and kissed a goddamn beggar, and now—" Footsteps thundered from behind Lyra. She spun to see more masked figures emerging from multiple corridors, all converging on her position. Too many. Way too many. Senna's smile widened. "Now you're going to learn your place the hard way." Lyra ran. She didn't think, didn't plan, just bolted toward the nearest corridor that wasn't packed with assassins. Her breath came in ragged gasps, lungs burning, the white silk wrap tangling around her legs. Behind her, someone shouted orders. Boots pounded stone. The eastern gate. She had to reach the eastern gate. She took a corner too fast and slammed into the wall, pain exploding through her shoulder, pushed off, kept running. Another corridor, then another, the pack complex a maze she'd known her whole life but suddenly couldn't navigate through the panic fogging her brain. A door ahead, she grabbed the handle, wrenched it open, threw herself through, and— Strong hands caught her. Lyra screamed and thrashed, but the grip was iron. "Stop! It's me!" The beggar's voice cut through her panic. She went still, gasping, and looked up to find him crouched in what looked like an old storage room, barely lit by a single torch. He was bleeding from a cut across his cheek, but otherwise seemed unharmed. "How did you—" Shortcut. He pulled her deeper into the room, positioning them behind a stack of old crates. "How many following you?" I don't know. A lot. Senna said, she said the ceremony was rigged, that Gareth was supposed to claim me and break me, that... Breathe. His hands moved to her shoulders again, steadying. I need you to breathe and focus. Can you do that? Lyra nodded, forcing air into her lungs. Good. Listen, we're not getting out through the eastern gate. Too obvious. They'll have it covered. Then where? There's an old drainage tunnel that runs under the western wall. Exits about half a mile into the woods. We can make it if we move fast. How do you know about that? That tunnel's been sealed for... His expression stopped her. You're not just a vagrant, she said slowly. You know this place. You know things you shouldn't know. Who are you? The sounds of pursuit were getting closer. Shouting, the clang of weapons. The beggar's gray eyes locked on hers, and for the first time she saw something like regret there. I'm someone who made a lot of enemies, he said quietly, and you just became one of them by choosing me. I'm sorry for that. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting right now. He rose, pulling her up with him. The tunnel's this way. Stay close, stay quiet, and if I tell you to do something, you do it immediately. No questions. Agreed? Lyra wanted to argue, wanted to demand real answers, but the footsteps were right outside now, and she was out of options. Agreed, she whispered. They moved through the storage room to a back door she'd never noticed before, then down a series of increasingly narrow passages that seemed to wind through the walls themselves. The beggar navigated them with absolute confidence, never hesitating at intersections, his hand warm and solid around hers. Here, he said finally, stopping at what looked like a solid wall. He pressed his palm against a specific stone, and something clicked. A section of the wall swung inward, revealing a dark opening that smelled of earth and old water. In? Now! Lyra ducked through the opening, and he followed, pulling the hidden door closed behind them. Darkness swallowed everything. She heard him moving, heard the scratch of flint, and then a small flame bloomed to life. A tiny oil lamp he'd apparently been carrying this whole time. They were in a tunnel maybe 5 feet high, the walls carved from raw stone and slick with moisture. The smell down here was worse than she'd thought, decay and mold and something sour that made her eyes water. This way! The beggar led her forward, moving in a half-crouch, the lamp casting wild shadows. They walked in silence for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Lyra's mind churned, trying to make sense of everything that had happened in the last hour. The ceremony, the kiss, the assassins, Senna's betrayal. The man ahead of her, who fought like a demon and knew secret passages through her own pack's complex. Stop, he said suddenly, holding up one hand. They froze. Ahead, faint and distant, Lyra heard voices. Coming from the direction they were heading, the beggar cursed under his breath and extinguished the lamp, plunging them into absolute darkness. They found the tunnel, he whispered, his breath warm against her ear. Or they knew about it all along. What do we do? His hand found hers in the dark, squeezing once. We fight our way through. There's no other exit. I can't fight. I don't know how to... You won't have to. Just stay behind me and don't get in my way. The voices ahead got louder, clearer. She could make out maybe 3 distinct speakers, their words echoing off the tunnel walls. Should have caught them by now. Check every side passage. Alpha wants them alive, remember? Light bloomed ahead, multiple torches being carried toward them. The beggar moved. He released Lyra's hand and surged forward into the darkness with absolute confidence, like he could see in the pitch black. She heard shouts of surprise, the ring of steel, a choked scream, then light everywhere as someone dropped their torch. Lyra saw him clearly for the first time in combat. 3 assassins in the tunnel, barely room to maneuver, and he was taking them apart with ruthless efficiency. Not flashy, just economical movements that ended in blood and broken bodies. The first one went down with a crushed windpipe. The second took a knife through the eye. The third tried to run and got his throat opened for the effort. 5 seconds. 3 bodies. The beggar stood among the corpses, chest heaving, covered in blood that wasn't his. He picked up one of the dropped torches and turned to look at Lyra. His face was spattered with red. The beggar's rags were torn, revealing lean muscle and what looked like old scars underneath. His gray eyes were hard as iron. Still want to know who I am? He asked quietly. Lyra's voice shook. Yes. He studied her for a long moment, something working behind his expression. Then he sighed and reached up to wipe the blood from his face with the back of one hand. "My name is Cale Draven," he said, "and until 3 years ago, I was the Alpha King of the Thornridge Pack." The words hit Lyra like a physical blow. Alpha King, the title that had been empty since before she was old enough to remember. The ruler who'd supposedly died in the wasteland, though no body was ever found. The man whose disappearance had left a power vacuum that the warlords like Gareth had been fighting to fill ever since. "That's impossible," she breathed. "The Alpha King is dead." "I let everyone believe that." Cale's voice was flat. "I had to. The pack was rotting from the inside. Traitors in my own council, assassins in my own guard. So I disappeared, went into the wasteland, spent 3 years hunting down every conspirator, every betrayer, every coward who thought they could carve up my kingdom. And you came back. Tonight. I came back tonight to watch the ceremony, to see which of the warlords had gotten bold enough to rig the mate selections." His mouth twisted into something bitter. "Gareth was always ambitious, but I didn't think he'd go this far." Lyra's head spun. "The ceremony was rigged for me specifically?" "You or someone like you, a girl with no powerful family, someone they could control or dispose of without consequences. Gareth was supposed to claim you, make you disappear, and use your death to scare other potential rebels into submission." Kyle's gray eyes bored into hers. "But then you kissed a beggar, ruined their whole plan, and now they're trying to clean up the mess before I can expose them." "Before you—" Lyra's breath caught. "They don't know who you are?" "Not yet. But they will soon. And when they do—" A sound from behind them made them both spin. More footsteps. Dozens of them, coming from the direction they'd originally been heading. Kyle swore viciously and grabbed Lyra's hand. "Run! Now!" They sprinted back the way they'd come, the torch throwing wild shadows. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit multiplied. Shouts, the scrape of weapons, the thunder of boots on stone. "There's another exit," Cale panted as they ran. "Older, harder to reach. If we can make it—" Something whistled past Lyra's ear and sparked off the wall ahead. An arrow. "Down!" Cale yanked her to the ground just as another volley of arrows hissed through the space where they'd been standing. They scrambled forward on hands and knees, the torch lost behind them, darkness swallowing them whole. "Keep moving," Cale's voice came from somewhere ahead. "Feel the right wall and follow it." Lyra's hand scraped against rough stone as she crawled, heart hammering, the sounds of their pursuers getting closer by the second. She could hear them clearly now, coordinated, disciplined, closing the net. Then her hand hit empty air. "Here!" Kael's voice was right beside her. "Side passage. In." She scrambled through the opening and he followed, both of them rolling into a space barely wide enough for 2 people. Kael did something. Shifted a stone, she thought, and part of the wall slid closed behind them with a grinding sound. Darkness. Silence. Just their ragged breathing in a space so small their shoulders touched. Footsteps thundered past their hiding spot. Torchlight flickered through cracks in the stone, then faded as the group moved on. They waited. 1 minute. 2. 5. Finally, Kael whispered, "They're gone. For now." "Where are we?" "Priest Hole. Old escape route from when the pack fought territorial wars. Nobody remembers it exists except—" He trailed off. "Except the Alpha King." "Yeah." More silence. In the dark, Lyra couldn't see his face, couldn't read his expression. Could only feel the heat of him beside her, smell blood and sweat and something else underneath, pine and smoke and winter. "Why did you come back?" she asked quietly. "If you were safe in the wasteland, why risk it?" His breath ghosted across her temple. "Because I'm tired of running, tired of watching my kingdom tear itself apart from a distance. I came back to reclaim what's mine and execute every traitor who thought they could rule in my place." "And me?" Lyra's voice was barely audible. "What am I to you? A complication? A tool? What?" For a long time he didn't answer. Then his hand found hers in the dark, his fingers rough and warm as they laced through her own. "Right now?" Kael's voice was soft, tired, and more honest than she'd heard it yet. "Right now, you're the only person in this entire kingdom I can trust, and that terrifies me more than you could possibly understand. Before Lyra could respond to that, before she could even process what it meant, a sound echoed through the darkness, distant, rhythmic, getting closer. Metal scraping on stone. Kale went rigid beside her. Fuck! What? What is that? Excavation tools. They're going to dig us out. But you said nobody knows about this. I was wrong. His voice was grim. Someone does. Someone who knows all the old passages, all the secret ways. He paused, and when he spoke again, there was a new edge to his words. Someone who was there when they were built. Lyra's stomach dropped. Your old council. The ones I didn't kill yet. Yes. The scraping got louder, closer, mixed with voices now, giving orders. Kyle shifted in the darkness, his body tensing for movement. When I give the signal, we're going to have to run blind. The passage goes another 30 feet before it opens into the old temple basement. From there, we can reach the surface. 30 feet in pitch black with assassins behind us. Great plan. Despite everything, she heard him huff something that might have been a laugh. You have a better one? Not even a little bit. The scraping stopped. In the sudden silence, Lyra heard breathing, multiple people just on the other side of the wall that hid them. Then, we know you're in there, Draven. The voice was cultured, educated, touched with an accent Lyra couldn't quite place. Not one of the assassins. Someone else. Kale's entire body went still. Come out, the voice continued. Bring the girl. We'll make this quick. You have my word. Your word, Kale said, his voice carrying through the stone. Stopped meaning anything when you tried to poison me in my own bed, Marcus. A pause, then a low chuckle. Ah, so you did figure that out. Took you long enough. Who's Marcus? Lyra whispered. My former advisor, Kyle said, loud enough for the man outside to hear. The one who planned the coup. The one who's been running the pack into the ground for 3 years while pretending to search for my body. Running it into the ground? Marcus sounded genuinely offended. I've brought stability, order, everything you were too weak to maintain. You've turned the pack into a prison ruled by thugs like Gareth Kane. Gareth serves his purpose, as did the girl, before you complicated things. A pause. Tell me, Draven, did you really think you could just walk back in here and reclaim your throne? After 3 years of hiding in the dirt like a coward? I wasn't hiding, Kyle said quietly. I was hunting. Hunting what? Rats in the wasteland? Old grudges? Marcus laughed. You're finished. Your allies are dead. Your supporters scattered. You have nothing and no one, except maybe that little fool you tricked into kissing you. Lyra felt Kale's fingers tighten around hers. She didn't trick me, Lyra called out, surprising herself. I chose him. By law, that makes me his mate, and if you want him, you'll have to go through me first. Silence on the other side of the wall. Then Marcus spoke again, and this time his voice was colder. Brave words from a girl with no rank, no training, and no future. Gareth will enjoy breaking you when this is over. Gareth can try. Another pause. Very well. Marcus's voice shifted, taking on a tone of command. Bring down the wall. Kill them both. The scraping resumed, louder now, more urgent. The sound of pickaxes hitting stone, chunks being broken away. Time to go, Kale breathed. Stay close. Don't let go of my hand. He pulled her forward into absolute darkness. Lyra stumbled, blind, trusting only his grip and the faint sound of his footsteps ahead. Behind them, the wall began to crack. They ran. 30 feet of pitch black. 30 feet of hand-in-hand terror with assassins literally tearing down the wall behind them. Lyra's free hand scraped against stone, her feet stumbling over uneven ground, her breath coming in gasps that echoed off unseen walls. Light bloomed behind them, torches pouring through the breach. Faster! Kale's grip turned crushing. Lyra's foot caught on something, and she went down hard, pain lancing through her knee. Kyle didn't stop. He yanked her up, practically carrying her now, his strength the only thing keeping her moving. Then the passage opened up. They burst into a larger space, some kind of underground chamber with walls that soared into darkness overhead. Faint moonlight filtered through cracks in the ceiling, just enough to see by. There, seats. Kale pointed to a series of carved handholds leading up the far wall. Climb! Lyra didn't hesitate. She grabbed the first handhold and pulled herself up, her injured knee screaming in protest. Below, torches spilled into the chamber, along with at least a dozen armed figures. "Shoot them down!" Marcus's voice echoed. Arrows hissed through the air. Kale was right below her, climbing fast, using his body to shield her from the worst of it. An arrow skimmed his shoulder, drawing blood. Another buried itself in the stone inches from Lyra's hand. She climbed faster, arms burning, fingers slipping on the old carved holds. Then her hand hit dirt. The surface. She pulled herself through the opening, some kind of collapsed section of floor in what looked like an abandoned temple, and collapsed on her back, gasping. Kyle emerged a second later, blood running down his arm from the arrow graze. He grabbed her, pulled her to her feet. "Move!" They ran through the ruins of the old temple, between crumbling pillars and overbroken stone. Behind them, Lyra heard their pursuers emerging from the tunnel, spreading out, surrounding the temple. Nowhere to go. Nowhere left to run. They burst out of the temple's front entrance and into open air. Moonlight turned everything silver, the abandoned courtyard, the forest beyond, the 50 armed figures waiting for them in a semicircle. Kyle skidded to a halt, pulling Lyra behind him. At the center of the semicircle stood a figure in dark robes, face illuminated by a single torch. Marcus. He was older than Lyra had imagined, maybe 60, with silver hair and eyes like chips of ice. "Impressive," Marcus said, sounding genuinely pleased. "I'd forgotten how stubborn you could be, Draven. But this is the end. Surrender now and I'll make it quick." "Like you made it quick for the others?" Kyle's voice was steady despite the blood running down his arm. "How many of my loyal council did you kill before you came for me?" "All of them," Marcus smiled. "Every single one who wouldn't bend the knee. They died believing you'd return to save them. They were wrong." "Was I?" Kale's stance shifted subtly, weight balanced. "Because I'm standing right here, surrounded, outnumbered 25 to 1, with nothing but a frightened girl at your back." Marcus shook his head. "This isn't a rescue, Draven. This is an execution." Lyra's heart hammered so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. This was it, the end of the line. No more running, no more hiding. She looked at Kyle's back, at the blood staining his ragged clothes, at the scars she could now see covering his arms. He'd spent 3 years in hell preparing for this. 3 years hunting traitors, building strength, waiting for his moment, and she'd ruined it by kissing him in a moment of panic. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Kyle glanced back at her, one eyebrow raised. "For what?" "For dragging you into this. For kissing you. For—" He laughed. Actually laughed. A short, sharp sound that made Marcus frown. "You didn't drag me into anything," Kyle said. "I was already here. Already committed. You just—" He paused, considering. "You accelerated my timeline. Forced my hand." "Touching," Marcus interrupted. "But I'm bored now. Kill them." The assassins raised their weapons. And then Kyle did something Lyra didn't expect. He threw back his head and howled. The sound was massive, primal, echoing off the ruins and into the forest beyond. Not a human sound, the call of an alpha, amplified by power that made Lyra's bones vibrate and her wolf instinct scream to submit. The assassins hesitated, confused. Marcus's face went pale. "No, you can't. Your power was broken." The forest answered. Howls erupted from every direction. Dozens of them, hundreds. The thunder of paws hitting earth. "You wanted to know what I was doing for 3 years?" Kale's voice carried across the courtyard, suddenly commanding, regal, the voice of a king. "I was gathering an army, every outcast you banished, every rebel you tried to silence, every wolf who remembered what this pack was supposed to be." Wolves burst from the tree line, not pack wolves. These were larger, wilder, their eyes gleaming silver in the moonlight. Rogues and outcasts, the ones who'd been driven from Thornridge territory and left to die in the wasteland, led by a massive gray wolf with scars across its muzzle and murder in its eyes. The gray wolf shifted mid-stride, bones cracking and reforming, until a woman stood there, tall, lean, with short dark hair and a face like granite. "Hello, Marcus," she said, her voice carrying the same command as Kyle's. "Miss me?" Marcus stumbled backward. "Vera, you're supposed to be dead." "Funny thing about that," Vera smiled, showing teeth. Kale found me before your assassins could finish the job. Saved my life, told me to wait, to gather others like me. She gestured to the army of wolves surrounding them. And here we are. The tide had turned. Marcus's assassins were now the ones surrounded, outnumbered, facing down an army of rogues who had nothing left to lose. "Stand down," Kale ordered, his voice absolute, "or die where you stand." One by one, the assassins dropped their weapons, all except Marcus. He stood there in the center of the courtyard, torchlight casting wild shadows across his face. Then, slowly, he reached into his robes and pulled out a small vial filled with something dark and viscous. "If I can't have this kingdom," he said quietly, "then no one will." He threw the vial at the ground. It shattered. Black smoke billowed up, spreading fast, carrying with it a smell that made Lyra's eyes water and her throat close. "Poison!" Vera shouted. "Everyone back!" But Kael didn't move back. He moved forward straight into the smoke, his hand outstretched. Lyra screamed his name, Lyra. Through the billowing darkness, she saw him grab Marcus by the throat and lift him off the ground. Saw Marcus's face turn purple, his hands clawing uselessly at Kael's grip. "You wanted to destroy my kingdom?" Kael's voice was cold as winter. "You first." He snapped Marcus's neck with a sound like a breaking branch. The body dropped. The smoke began to clear, and Kael stood in the center of it all, covered in blood, breathing hard, his gray eyes blazing with something that might have been triumph or fury or grief. Lyra ran to him. She didn't think about it, didn't question it, just crossed the space between them and threw her arms around him, feeling his heart hammering against her chest. "You're insane," she gasped. His arms came around her slowly, carefully, like he wasn't quite sure what to do with the gesture. "Probably," he agreed. Around them, the rogue army shifted back to human form, surrounding the surrendered assassins. Vera approached, her expression grim. "That's not all of them," she said to Kael. "There are more in the pack complex, more loyal to the old council." "I know." Kael didn't release Lyra. "We'll deal with them at dawn. For now, secure the perimeter. No one gets in or out." Vera nodded and started barking orders. Kael finally pulled back from Lyra, his hands moving to her shoulders. "You're hurt. So are you." "I heal fast." His thumb brushed across a cut on her cheek that she hadn't even realized was there. "You don't." "I'm fine." "Stubborn." "Look who's talking." Despite everything, the blood, the bodies, the army of rogues surrounding them, Kael smiled. Actually smiled, and it transformed his entire face from something harsh into something almost warm. "Come on," he said softly. "Let's get you somewhere safe before—" He never finished the sentence. His eyes went wide. He looked down. Lyra followed his gaze and saw it. A dart buried in his chest, right over his heart, the kind used for large animals. "No." The word came out broken. Kael's legs buckled. Lyra caught him as he fell, his weight nearly taking her down too. "Vera!" she screamed, but Vera was already moving, along with a dozen other rogues. They formed a protective circle around Lyra and the fallen Alpha King, searching for the shooter. Kael's breathing was shallow, his skin turning gray. "Poison," he managed. "Different than the smoke. Slower." "No, no, no!" Lyra pressed her hands to the wound, trying to stop the blood, trying to do something, anything. "Don't you dare die on me. Not after all that. Not after—" His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing away tears she hadn't realized were falling. "Lyra," his voice was fading. "Listen, the bond, it can save me. If you accept it, fully, let our wolves merge. I don't know how to—" "Yes, you do." His gray eyes locked on hers, desperate and clear despite the poison working through his system. "You already chose me. Now choose me again. Mean it this time." Lyra's hands shook as she held his face. She could feel his heartbeat under her palm, irregular and weak. This man, this stranger who'd turned out to be a king, who'd fought his way through hell to save a kingdom that didn't know it needed saving, who'd taken her reckless kiss and turned it into something real. She leaned down and pressed her lips to his. This time it wasn't desperate. It wasn't tactical. It was a promise. Power surged between them like lightning, crackling under her skin, flooding through her veins. Her wolf, which had been quiet and subdued her entire life, suddenly roared to the surface, reaching for its mate. Kale gasped against her mouth, his back arching. The bond snapped into place like a steel cable pulled taut. Lyra felt everything, his pain, his determination, his absolute refusal to die here after coming so far. And underneath it all, something else. Something that felt like recognition, like coming home after being lost. When she pulled back, Kael's eyes were clear. The gray in his skin was fading, color returning. "Holy shit," Vera breathed from somewhere nearby. "Did that actually work?" Kael sat up slowly, Lyra's hand still on his shoulders. He looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read, wonder, maybe, or fear. "You saved me," he said. "You saved me first." "That was different." "No," Lyra said firmly. "It really wasn't." A commotion at the edge of the clearing made them both turn. The rogues parted to reveal a figure being dragged forward by two wolves in human form, a familiar face that made Lyra's blood run cold. Senna. She was struggling against her captors, her hands bound, a crossbow lying discarded at her feet. "Found the shooter," one of the rogues reported. "She was hiding in the temple ruins." Senna's eyes found Lyra's across the space, and there was nothing but hatred there. "You," Lyra breathed, "you tried to kill him." "I tried to finish what Marcus started." Senna spat on the ground. "This kingdom doesn't need a king who abandoned it. It needs strong alphas like Gareth, leaders who aren't afraid to do what's necessary." Kael rose slowly to his feet, Lyra rising with him. His voice when he spoke was deadly quiet. "And what's necessary exactly? Rigging mate ceremonies? Murdering girls who ask questions? Building a kingdom on fear?" Senna lifted her chin. "Yes, all of that. Because that's what works. That's what keeps order." "No." Kael's hand found Lyra's, lacing their fingers together. "That's what breaks everything worth saving, and I'm going to prove it." He turned to address the assembled rogues, his voice carrying that same regal command from before. "Tonight, we take back our pack. Not through fear, not through violence unless we have no choice. We take it back by showing them what real leadership looks like." His grip on Lyra's hand tightened. "And tomorrow, we build something better." The rogues howled their approval, the sound echoing through the forest and into the night sky. Lyra looked up at the man, the king, whose hand she held, and felt the bond between them pulse like a second heartbeat. She'd kissed a beggar to escape fate. Instead, she'd found something infinitely more dangerous, something that felt remarkably like hope. But as Vera started organizing the rogues for the assault on the pack complex, and as Senna was led away still spitting curses, and as dawn began to lighten the eastern sky, Lyra couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning, that the real fight, for the kingdom, for their bond, for everything they both wanted to build, was still coming. And somewhere in the pack complex, Gareth Kane was waking up to discover his perfect bride had been claimed by a dead king. The revolution was about to begin. Dawn came like a blade, sharp, cold, and unforgiving. Lyra stood at the edge of the rogue encampment, watching the first rays of sunlight bleed across the horizon. Her hands still trembled from the night before, from the bond that now pulsed beneath her skin like a second heartbeat. She could feel Kael somewhere behind her, his presence a constant pull at the base of her spine. The mate bond, fully realized, irreversible. She'd saved his life with it, bound herself to a king who'd been dead for 3 years, a man who was about to march on his own pack and tear it apart from the inside. "You should eat something," Vera's voice cut through her thoughts. The scarred woman approached carrying 2 pieces of dried meat that looked about as appetizing as leather. Lyra took one anyway. "Not hungry. Eat it anyway. You're going to need your strength." Vera bit into her own piece, chewing mechanically. "What happens today? It's going to get ugly fast. The warlords won't surrender. They'll fight to the death before they let Kael take back control." "How many are there? Warlords, I mean." 5 who matter. Gareth's the strongest, but Marcus was the brains keeping them in line. With him dead, Vera shrugged. "They're going to scramble, fight each other for dominance. That's when we strike." "We." Lyra tested the word. "I'm not a fighter. I don't even know how to shift properly." Vera's dark eyes studied her with unsettling intensity. "You're Kael's mate, his queen. Whether you asked for it or not, that makes you a target and a weapon. The warlords will come for you to get to him. You need to be ready. Ready how? I can't. You bonded with an Alpha King and pulled him back from poison that should have killed him in minutes. Vera's voice dropped low, almost dangerous. Don't tell me you can't. You just did the impossible. Now you need to own it. Before Lyra could respond, a commotion erupted from the center of camp. Raised voices. The sound of someone struggling. They found Kale standing over a kneeling figure. One of the assassins from last night, hands bound, face purple with fear. Around them, rogues had formed a loose circle, watching with predatory interest. Tell me again, Kael said quietly. Too quietly. How many guards are stationed at the eastern entrance? I swear I don't know. Kael's hand shot out, gripping the man's jaw hard enough to make bone creak. Wrong answer. 12. The word came out strangled. 12 guards, 2 stationed outside, 10 in the corridor beyond. Patrols? Every 15 minutes. They rotate. Weapons? Standard issue. Blades, crossbows, nothing heavy. Kael released him, and the man crumpled. See? That wasn't so hard. He turned to Vera without looking at Lyra. We go in through the eastern entrance, fast and quiet. Secure the corridor before the next patrol cycle. And if we run into resistance, we go through it. Kyle's voice was flat, final. No prisoners, no mercy. Anyone still loyal to the warlords dies. Lyra's stomach turned. You can't just execute everyone who... Yes, I can. Kale finally looked at her, and his gray eyes were cold as winter stone. They made their choice when they helped rig the ceremonies, when they murdered my council, when they turned this pack into a prison. He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell blood still dried in his clothes. This is war, Lyra, not a debate. It's your own people. They stopped being my people when they sold themselves to traitors. The bond between them pulsed with something dark and angry, making Lyra's wolf whimper and retreat. This wasn't the man who'd held her last night. This was someone else. Something else. The Alpha King, ruthless and absolute. I need you to stay here, Kael continued, his tone gentling fractionally. With a guard detail. You'll be safe while we... No. His eyebrows rose. No? You said I'm your mate. Your queen. Lyra forced herself to hold his stare, even though every instinct screamed to submit. That means I don't hide while you fight. I stand with you. You'll die. Maybe, but I'll die on my feet, not cowering in a tent. Silence stretched between them, heavy and charged. Around them the rogues had gone still, watching this confrontation with the kind of attention usually reserved for blood sport. Kael's jaw worked. You don't know what you're asking for. Yes, I do. I'm asking to matter, to be more than just a pawn you claimed because I kissed you. Lyra stepped closer, ignoring the way her hands shook. You wanted a partner, not a possession. Prove it. For a long moment, she thought he'd refuse, thought he'd order her restrained and left behind while he marched to war. Then he smiled, sharp and dangerous and almost approving. Fine, but you stay close to Vera, you follow orders, and if I tell you to run, you run. Understood? Understood. Good. He turned back to the assembled rogues. We move in 10 minutes. Light armor only, no unnecessary weight. His gaze swept across them like a blade. Today we take back what's ours. Today we remind this pack what real leadership looks like. And anyone who stands in our way... He paused, letting the silence build. They bleed. The rogues howled their approval, the sound raising goosebumps across Lyra's arms. This was happening, really happening. She was about to march on her own pack alongside an army of outcasts, bonded to a king everyone thought was dead, to overthrow warlords who'd kill her the second they got a clear shot. Vera appeared at her elbow, pressing something cold and heavy into her hand. A knife, short blade, leather-wrapped handle, wickedly sharp. Try not to cut yourself with it, Vera said dryly. And if you have to use it, go for soft targets. Throat, eyes, groin. Don't try to fight fair. There's no such thing. Lyra stared at the weapon. I've never killed anyone. You might today. Get your head around that now or you won't make it through the gates. 10 minutes later, they were moving. The rogue army flowed through the forest like shadows, silent and coordinated in a way that spoke to weeks of drilling. Kyle led from the front, with Vera on his right and Lyra, God's helper, on his left. The bond thrummed between them, a constant awareness of his presence, his mood, his readiness for violence. They reached the eastern wall just as the sky began to lighten from black to gray. Kyle held up one fist. Everyone stopped. Ahead, through the trees, Lyra could see the wall rising 20 feet high, built from stone and reinforced with iron. 2 guards stood at the gate, exactly as the prisoner had said. They looked bored, unprepared. Kale gestured. 2 rogues peeled off, moving with liquid silence toward the guards. Lyra watched them cross the distance in seconds, watched blades flash in the dim light, watched both guards go down without making a sound. Her stomach lurched. "Move," Kale whispered. They surged forward as one, pouring through the gate and into the corridor beyond. The space was narrow, lit by guttering torches, the ceiling low enough to make the larger rogues duck. No alarm yet. No shouts. They made it 20 feet before the patrol rounded the corner. 10 guards, just like the prisoner said. They stopped dead, eyes going wide as they processed what they were seeing. Rogues in the complex, armed and moving with purpose. One guard opened his mouth to shout. Kale's blade took him in the throat before any sound escaped. Then everything exploded into chaos. The corridor erupted into violence, steel on steel, snarls and screams, bodies slamming into walls. Lyra pressed herself against the stone, trying to stay out of the way, as rogues and guards tore into each other with savage efficiency. A guard broke through the melee, coming straight for her, his eyes wild and his blade raised. Lyra's body moved before her brain caught up. She ducked under his swing, felt the wind of it pass over her head, and drove her own knife up into his armpit, one of the soft targets Vera had mentioned. Hot blood sprayed across her hands. The guard made a horrible choking sound and collapsed. Lyra stared at the body, at the knife still buried in flesh, at her hands covered in red. "Move!" Vera grabbed her arm, yanking her away from the corpse. "Don't freeze up. Keep moving." The fight was already over. All 10 guards down, the rogues barely winded. Kale wiped his blade on a dead man's shirt, his expression carved from ice. "Secure the corridor. Strip the bodies. We need their uniforms." The rogues moved with practiced efficiency, stripping armor and weapons from the dead. Within minutes, a dozen of them were dressed as Thornridge guards, indistinguishable from the real thing at a distance. "The throne room is 3 levels up," Kyle said, addressing the group. "That's where the warlords will be gathering for morning council. We take it before they realize what's happening." "What about the rest of the pack?" someone asked. "The civilians?" "They stay out of this or they get caught in the crossfire." "Their choice." Kale's eyes were hard. "Our target is the warlords and anyone actively defending them. Everyone else gets one chance to stand down." They moved deeper into the complex, climbing stairs carved from the same stone as the walls. Lyra's heart hammered against her ribs, the bond feeding her Kale's cold determination mixed with something darker, anticipation, maybe, or hunger for violence. They passed clusters of pack members emerging for the morning. Most took one look at the armed group and scattered. A few braver souls started to ask questions, then thought better of it when they saw Kale's face. No one tried to stop them. 3 levels up, a massive set of double doors stood ahead, flanked by 4 guards who actually looked alert. These ones recognized Kyle. "Holy shit," one breathed. That's the Alpha King." Kale moved. He crossed the distance in a blur, too fast for human eyes to track, and broke the first guard's neck before the man could finish his sentence. The other 3 barely had time to draw weapons before the rogues were on them. It was over in seconds. Kale stood before the throne room doors, chest heaving, covered in fresh blood. He looked back at Lyra, and for just a moment she saw something flicker in his eyes. A question, maybe, or regret. Then it was gone. He kicked the doors open. The throne room was exactly as Lyra remembered from the few times she'd been allowed inside as a child. Massive. Vaulted ceiling held up by pillars carved to look like ancient trees. At the far end, the Alpha's throne, black stone, unadorned, built for function rather than comfort. And standing around a large table in the center of the room were the 5 warlords. Gareth Kane stood at the head, his massive frame blocking most of the view. Beside him, 4 other Alphas, each one radiating the kind of dominance that made normal wolves cringe. They all turned as the doors crashed open. For a heartbeat, no one moved. No one breathed. Then Gareth smiled, a slow, terrible expression that showed too many teeth. "Well," he said, his voice filling the chamber, "look what crawled out of its grave. The dead king returns." Cale walked into the room like he owned it, because he did. "Hello, Gareth. Still compensating with violence, I see." "Compensating?" Gareth's smile widened. "I'm the strongest alpha in this pack, have been for 3 years, while you were playing beggar in the dirt." "I wasn't playing." Kyle stopped 10 feet from the table, rogues fanning out behind him. "I was watching, learning, finding out which of my so-called warriors were actually cowards serving traitors." One of the other warlords, a lean man with a face like a ferret, stepped forward. "Marcus said you were dead, showed us proof." Marcus lied. As you knew he was lying, Cale's gaze swept across all 5 of them. "Every one of you helped him rig the ceremonies, claim females who had no choice, build a kingdom on fear and broken bonds." "We built stability," Gareth shot back. "Something you never could. You were weak, too worried about fairness and choice and all that shit that doesn't matter when you're trying to hold territory. And yet here I am, alive, with an army, while Marcus is dead and your entire system is crumbling." Gareth's smile finally faded. "You think a few dozen rogues can take this pack? We have 300 warriors, trained, loyal. They'll tear you apart." "Loyal to what? You?" Cale laughed, harsh and ugly. "They're loyal to whoever's strongest, and right now, that's me." "Prove it." Gareth stepped away from the table, cracking his knuckles. "You and me, right here. Winner takes the pack." "No." The word hung in the air, flat and absolute. Gareth blinked. "What?" "I said no. I'm not fighting you for entertainment." Cale's voice dropped to something deadly quiet. "I'm executing you for treason. All of you. No trial. No challenge. Just death." The room erupted. The warlords scattered, reaching for weapons. The rogues surged forward. And in the middle of it all, Kyle moved like death itself, his blade finding throats and hearts with mechanical precision. Lyra stayed near the door, Vera beside her, watching the throne room descend into chaos. The ferret-faced warlord went down first, Kyle's blade through his eye socket. The second one, a broad man with ritual scars covering his chest, lasted longer, managing to block 2 strikes before a rogue dragged him down from behind. That left 3. Gareth roared and shifted mid-charge, bones cracking and reforming until a massive wolf stood where the man had been. He launched himself at Kyle with jaws wide enough to crush a skull. Kale didn't shift. Didn't need to. He sidestepped with inhuman speed and brought his blade down across the wolf's flank, opening a gash that sprayed blood across the floor. Gareth yelped and twisted, snapping at empty air. "You're slow," Kale said conversationally. 3 years ago you might have landed that. Now?" He struck again. Another cut, this one across the shoulder. "You're sloppy, overconfident." Gareth shifted back to human, blood running down his side. "Fuck you. I'll kill you and your little whore both." Kale's expression went cold. Wrong thing to say. He moved. Lyra barely saw it. One moment Kale was 10 feet away, the next he was on Gareth, driving him backward into the stone table with enough force to crack wood. Gareth threw a punch that would have shattered ribs, but Kyle caught his wrist and twisted until bones snapped. Gareth screamed. "She's not a whore," Kyle said quietly, his free hand closing around Gareth's throat. "She's my mate, my queen, and you will die knowing you never even got close to touching her." He squeezed. Gareth's eyes bulged, his good hand clawed at Kyle's grip, accomplishing nothing. His face turned purple, then gray. "Wait," the word came from behind them. One of the remaining warlords, an older man with silver hair and calculating eyes, held up both hands in surrender. "Wait, please. We yield." Kyle didn't release Gareth. "Yield? We were following Marcus's orders. We didn't know, we thought you were actually dead, that we were doing what was best for the pack." The words came fast, desperate. "Let us live and we'll swear loyalty. Right now. Blood oath. Whatever you want." Kael studied him for a long moment. Then he looked at the last warlord, a younger man who looked ready to piss himself. "And you?" Kael asked. "You yielding too?" The young one nodded frantically. Kael's jaw worked. Lyra could feel the bond thrumming with indecision, with the weight of what he was about to decide. Kill them all and rule through fear, or show mercy and risk betrayal. "Kael," Lyra's voice cut through the tension. "Don't." He looked at her, surprise flickering across his features. "Don't kill them if they're surrendering," she continued, stepping forward despite Vera's warning hand on her arm. "You said you wanted to be different, to build something better. This is how it starts, with mercy when you have the power to destroy." "They rigged the ceremonies," Kael said flatly. "They helped Marcus murder my council. They turned this pack into a nightmare." "I know, and they should answer for that. But not like this. Not with an execution while they're unarmed and yielding." Lyra moved closer, close enough to see the blood spattered across his face. "You're better than they are. Prove it." Silence stretched like a wire about to snap. Then Kael's hand opened. Gareth collapsed to the floor, gasping and choking. "Fine." Kael's voice was rough. "They yield. For now." He turned to the two warlords who'd surrendered. "Strip, shift, run to the pack arena and wait there. Anyone who tries to fight or run beyond that gets hunted down and killed. Understood?" They nodded, already moving. "And Gareth?" Kael looked down at the gasping man at his feet. "You get special treatment." Gareth managed to lift his head, hate burning in his eyes. Kael smiled. "You wanted Lyra so badly? Wanted to claim her, break her, make her scream?" He crouched down, getting close enough that his next words were almost a whisper. "Instead, you're going to watch me claim her properly, in front of the entire pack, and then you're going to spend the rest of your miserable life remembering that you lost everything because you were too weak to keep it." He stood, leaving Gareth choking on the floor. "Bind him," Kael ordered the nearest rogues. "Tight. I want him conscious for what comes next." The rogues moved to obey. Lyra's hands were shaking again. She'd just watched her mate, her king, nearly murder a man with his bare hands, then spare him for something that might actually be worse. Kael crossed to her, his eyes searching her face. "You stopped me," he said quietly. "Why?" "Because you were about to become them. The warlords, ruling through fear and death." Lyra met his gaze. "And I didn't bond with that person. I bonded with someone who could be better." His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing across her cheek. The gesture was gentle despite the blood on his hands. "You're either the bravest person I've ever met," he murmured, "or the most foolish. Can it be both?" Despite everything, he almost smiled. Then Vera's voice cut through the moment. "Kael, we've got a problem." They turned to find her standing at the throne room's massive windows, looking down at the courtyard below. Kael crossed to her, Lyra following. What she saw made her breath catch. The courtyard was packed. Hundreds of pack members, maybe more, all gathered in a seething mass. And at the front, forming a line of shields and spears, stood at least 100 warriors in full armor. "The garrison," Vera said grimly. "They heard the fighting. Now they're here to protect their warlords." Kael's expression went cold. "How many?" 150, maybe 200, armed and armored. We've got maybe 70 rogues, half of them already tired from the fight. Can we hold the throne room? For a while, but they'll just wait us out. Or worse, they'll start killing civilians until we surrender." Kael swore viciously. His hand found Lyra's, gripping tight enough to hurt. "I need to address them," he said. "Make them understand that the warlords were the enemy, not me." "They won't listen," Vera argued. "All they'll see is rogues attacking their leaders. They'll tear you apart the second you step outside." "Then what do you suggest?" Before Vera could answer, a sound echoed through the throne room, a slow, mocking clap. They all spun. Gareth sat bound against the far wall, blood running from his mouth, but somehow still managing to smile through broken teeth. "You're fucked," he rasped. "Even if you kill every warlord in this room, the pack will never accept you. They don't want a king. They want strength, stability, things you can't give them." He coughed, spraying red. "So go ahead. Make your pretty speeches. Try to win them over with mercy and fairness. They'll eat you alive. Kale's jaw clenched so hard Lyra heard it crack. He's right, Lyra heard herself say. Everyone turned to stare at her. What? Kale's voice was dangerous. He's right. They won't listen to you. Not like this. Not with you standing over their defeated leaders covered in blood. Lyra's mind raced, pieces clicking together. But they might listen to me. Absolutely not. Think about it. I'm one of them. Born and raised in this pack. They watched me grow up. And I was publicly claimed by Gareth at the ceremony. They all saw that. She turned to face Kale fully. If I stand in that courtyard and tell them the truth about the rigged ceremonies, about what the warlords were doing, they'll listen. They'll have to. They'll kill you the second you step outside. Maybe. Or maybe they'll see a victim who fought back. Someone who chose a dead king over a living monster. Lyra squeezed his hand. Let me try, please. The bond between them pulsed with his fear, his rage, his desperate desire to protect her. No, he said flatly. I won't risk you. It's not your choice. I'm your mate, not your prisoner. Lyra pulled her hand free, stepping back. I'm going down there. You can either support me or watch me fail alone. Kale's face went through a dozen emotions in as many seconds. Fury, fear, frustration, something that might have been pride. You're insane, he finally said. You knew that when you bonded with me. I didn't bond with you. You kissed me, remember? And you could have pushed me away, but you didn't. Lyra turned toward the door. So are you coming or not? For a heartbeat, she thought he'd refuse, thought he'd order her restrained. Then he moved to her side, his hand finding the small of her back. If we're doing this, he said quietly, we're doing it together, as equals, the way it should have been from the start. Lyra felt something shift in her chest, the bond strengthening, deepening, becoming something more than just survival. Together, she agreed. They walked toward the throne room doors, Vera and the rogues falling in behind them. Through the windows, Lyra could see the courtyard seething, could hear the roar of voices demanding answers, demanding blood. She was about to step into that mob and try to change a kingdom with nothing but words and a bond that was less than a day old. Either she'd succeed and help Kyle reclaim his throne, or she'd die trying and take him down with her. The doors swung open. Sunlight poured in, bright and unforgiving. And Lyra took her first step toward a fate she couldn't see and couldn't control. The Alpha King's hand steady against her spine and a courtyard full of warriors waiting to decide if she lived, or the courtyard fell silent when Lyra stepped through the gates. Not the peaceful kind of silence. The kind that comes right before someone gets torn apart. 200 warriors stood in formation, shields locked, spears pointed at the throne room entrance. Behind them, civilians pressed against the walls. Pack members who'd grown up alongside Lyra, who'd watched her stumble through her first shift, who'd whispered behind her back when she couldn't hold dominance against stronger wolves. Now they stared at her like she was a stranger. Kyle moved beside her, his presence a steady weight at her shoulder. The bond hummed between them, feeding her his readiness, his control, the cold calculation running behind his eyes. Vera and 20 rogues spread out behind them, hands on weapons, ready for the violence everyone knew was coming. The garrison commander stepped forward, a grizzled alpha named Thorn, with gray in his beard and scars from a dozen territorial wars. Lyra remembered him vaguely. He'd been kind once, years ago, when she'd gotten lost during a hunt. He didn't look kind now. Stand down, Thorn's voice carried across the courtyard. You're surrounded, outnumbered. If you surrender now, we'll make it quick. Kyle started to speak, but Lyra's hand on his arm stopped him. I need to do this, she murmured. His jaw worked. Then he nodded, stepping back half a pace. Lyra raised her voice, letting it carry the way she'd heard alphas do all her life. Commander Thorn, do you remember me? The old warrior's eyes narrowed. Lyra Vance, daughter of Robert and Marion, beta rank. His gaze flicked to Kyle, then back. You were claimed by Alpha Gareth last night. By rights, you belong to him. Not this vagrant. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I was selected by Gareth, Lyra corrected, her voice steady despite the fear clawing up her throat. I didn't choose him. The law says choice matters. I chose differently. You chose a beggar over a warrior. Thorn's disgust was obvious. You shamed yourself and your family. I chose freedom over slavery. Lyra took a step forward, ignoring the way spears shifted to track her movement. And the man I chose isn't a beggar. He's Kyle Draven, your Alpha King, the one you swore oaths to serve. The courtyard erupted. Shouts, denials. Someone screamed that it was a lie, that the Alpha King was dead, that this was some kind of trick. Thorn held up one hand and the noise died down. His face had gone carefully blank. The Alpha King died 3 years ago in the wasteland. We searched for months, found nothing. His eyes locked on Kale. If you're really him, prove it. Show us the royal mark. Kale's expression didn't change. He reached up, slowly, and pulled aside the ragged collar of his shirt. There, burned into the skin over his heart, was a mark Lyra had only seen in ancient texts. Interlocking circles forming a pattern that looked almost like a tree, the symbol of the Thornridge bloodline going back generations. The crowd went silent again. Thorn stared at the mark. His face cycled through shock, disbelief, and something that might have been hope before settling on suspicion. Marks can be faked, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Blood can't. Kale's voice was quiet, absolute. Take mine. Test it against the royal line records. You'll find I'm exactly who I say I am. Even if that's true, even if you're really Kyle Draven, you abandoned us. Thorn's voice rose, angry now. You disappeared for 3 years while this pack fell apart, while we struggled to hold territory, while Marcus and the warlords did what they had to do to keep order. He spat on the ground. You have no right to come back now and demand loyalty. Marcus was a traitor. Kale's words cut through the air like a blade. He tried to poison me in my own bed. When that failed, he staged my death and took control while I was recovering in the wasteland. Everything that happened after, the warlords, the rigged ceremonies, the murders, all of it traces back to him. Lies. But Thorn's voice wavered. Is it? Lyra stepped forward again. Ask yourself, when did the mate ceremonies become mandatory? When did they start pairing strong alphas with weak females who had no choice? When did girls start disappearing after rejecting their selected mates? Thorn's jaw tightened. 3 years ago, Lyra continued, right after Marcus declared the Alpha King dead, right after he convinced you all that strength mattered more than law, more than choice. She gestured toward the throne room. Gareth Kane was going to claim me last night, break me, make an example of what happens to females who question their place. And you all would have stood there and watched it happen because that's what the ceremonies became. Public executions disguised as bonding. The crowd shifted, uncomfortable now. A few faces showed shame, others anger, most just confusion. She's right. The voice came from the back of the crowd. Young, female. A girl pushed through the press of bodies, maybe 17, with a face Lyra didn't recognize. She looked terrified but determined. I was selected last month, the girl said, her voice shaking, by Alpha Corvin. He broke my arm on our wedding night because I asked him to wait. Said it was my duty to submit, that the law gave him the right. She held up her arm, still wrapped in bandages. This is what strength without law looks like. Another voice, this time an older woman. My daughter disappeared 2 years ago, after she refused her selected mate. They said she ran away, but I found her body in the woods, throat torn out. More voices now, building on each other. My son was executed for helping a female escape her bonding. They killed my brother when he questioned Marcus's orders. The warlords took my land, said I didn't have the strength to hold it. The garrison's formation was wavering, shields lowering, warriors looking at each other with dawning horror. Thorn's face had gone pale. We didn't know. You knew. Kale's voice was soft, but it carried. Maybe not all of it. Maybe you told yourselves it was necessary. That order required sacrifice, but you knew something was wrong. You just didn't have the courage to stand against it. The old warrior flinched like he'd been struck. Marcus is dead, Kyle continued. So are 2 of the warlords. The others have surrendered. This ends now. Today. You can stand with me and help rebuild what was broken, or you can die defending a system that destroyed everything you swore to protect. Choose. Silence stretched like a blade across stone. Then Thorn dropped to one knee. I choose you, my king. His voice was rough. I should have looked harder, should have questioned. I failed you, failed this pack, But if you'll have me, I'll spend the rest of my life making it right. One by one, the garrison followed. Warriors kneeling, shields lowered, spears pointed at the ground. Lyra felt something release in her chest, tension she hadn't realized she'd been holding. They'd done it. Actually done it. Won over the warriors without more bloodshed. Proven that words could be stronger than... Well, a voice said from behind them. That was touching. Everyone turned. Vera stood at the throne room entrance, but she wasn't alone. She had a knife pressed to the throat of a small child, a girl maybe 8 years old, with dark hair and terrified eyes. Lyra's blood turned to ice. Vera. Kale's voice was dangerously quiet. What are you doing? What I should have done 3 years ago. Vera's smile was cold, sharp. Finishing what Marcus started. The world seemed to tilt. Kale took a step forward. Let the child go. Or what? You'll kill me? Vera laughed. I saved your life in the wasteland, nursed you back from poison, spent 3 years pretending to be your loyal soldier while waiting for the perfect moment. The knife pressed harder against the girl's throat, drawing a thin line of blood. This is that moment. I don't understand. Lyra's voice came out broken. You helped us. You were with us the whole time. I was watching you fail. Vera's eyes were black and pitiless. Watching you make the same mistakes that got you nearly killed the first time. Mercy, fairness, compassion, all the weaknesses that made you unfit to rule. She shifted her grip on the child. Marcus was going to make me alpha, give me real power. But then you killed him before he could finish the transfer ritual. So now I have to take it the old way. By murdering a child? Kale's voice was flat. By proving you're still too weak to hold this pack. You won't trade her life for yours. Won't sacrifice the innocent to save the kingdom. And when everyone sees that, when they see their king freeze up because he can't make the hard choice, they'll know Marcus was right all along. The garrison had risen to their feet, weapons drawn again, but nobody moved. The child was too close to Vera. Any attack would kill her first. Kale stood perfectly still. The bond between him and Lyra thrummed with something awful, rage and grief, and a terrible, crushing helplessness. What do you want? He asked quietly. I want you to kneel, publicly renounce your claim to the throne. Name me as your successor. Vera's smile widened. Do that, and I'll let the girl live. Refuse, and I open her throat right here while everyone watches. You'll kill her anyway. Probably. But you'll never know for sure, will you? That's the beautiful part. You'll spend the rest of your life wondering if you could have saved her if you'd just been strong enough to sacrifice yourself. The child whimpered, tears streaming down her face. Lyra felt the bond shift, felt Kyle making a decision. No. She grabbed his arm. Don't. She's bluffing. She needs you dead to claim power, not abdicated. The second you kneel, she'll kill you both. I know. Kale's voice was hollow. But I can't. I won't let a child die because of me. Not again. Again? Lyra's breath caught. What do you... Marcus poisoned me at a feast, Kyle said, his eyes never leaving Vera. 3 years ago. Dozens of people ate from that table. I survived because I'm strong enough to metabolize most toxins. But a little girl, a servant's daughter who brought the wine, she tasted it to check for poison, died in my arms while I was too weak to help her. His voice cracked. I won't watch another child die for my mistakes. How noble! Vera's tone was mocking. And how utterly predictable. You're the same man who failed 3 years ago, the same weak king who couldn't protect his own people. She yanked the girl's head back, exposing more of her throat. So kneel, or she dies. You have 10 seconds. Kyle took a step toward the throne room entrance. Lyra's mind raced. The bond showed her everything, his determination to trade himself, his absolute certainty that he deserved this fate, his grief and rage and resignation all tangled together. He was going to kneel, going to sacrifice himself for a child he didn't know. And Vera would kill them both and claim the throne, and everything they'd fought for would be ash. Unless... The thought hit Lyra like lightning. The bond. Fully realized. Sharing power between mates. She'd pulled Kyle back from poison last night by channeling her strength through their connection. Could she do the opposite? Could she take his power and... 5 seconds, Vera said. Lyra closed her eyes and dove into the bond. It was like jumping into a river. Power crashed over her, Kael's strength, his dominance, his absolute authority as Alpha King. She grabbed for it, pulled it into herself, felt her wolf rise up and merge with something infinitely larger. Her eyes snapped open. The world looked different, sharper, every heartbeat audible, every scent distinct. She could feel the warriors in the courtyard, feel their submission to the power suddenly flooding through her veins. Alpha power. Borrowed. Temporary. But real. Kael staggered, feeling the drain. He turned to stare at her, shock written across his face. Lyra didn't wait. She moved. Not with Kael's practiced precision, not with a warrior's skill, just with raw speed borrowed from the bond, crossing the courtyard in half a heartbeat. Vera saw her coming, started to pull the knife across the child's throat. Lyra crashed into them both, her momentum carrying all three to the ground. She felt the blade slice across her shoulder instead of the girl's neck, felt blood spray hot across her face. Then she was rolling, the child tucked against her chest, putting her body between the girl and Vera. The scarred woman came up fast, blade in hand, murder in her eyes. But Kael was already there. He caught Vera's wrist mid-strike, twisted until bone snapped, and ripped the knife away. Then his hand closed around her throat, and he lifted her off the ground like she weighed nothing. "I trusted you," he said quietly. "Brought you back from nothing. Made you my second. Gave you purpose." His fingers tightened. "And you spent 3 years plotting my death." Vera clawed at his grip, accomplishing nothing. Her face turned purple. "Kael!" Lyra's voice was rough. She sat up, still holding the terrified child. "Don't." He looked at her and his eyes were empty. "Why not? She deserves this." "Because if you kill her like this, in rage, in revenge, you become what they said you were. Too brutal to lead, too violent to trust." Lyra struggled to her feet, her borrowed alpha power already fading. "Show them you're different. Show them you can be merciful even when it hurts." "She tried to murder a child." "I know. And she should answer for that. In front of the pack. With witnesses. With law." Lyra took a step closer. "Not like this. Not with your hands around her throat while everyone watches you lose control." The bond pulsed between them. She could feel his desire for violence, his need to end the threat permanently, could feel him balancing it against what he knew was right. Finally, slowly, his hand opened. Vera collapsed, gasping. "Bind her," Kael ordered. "I want her in chains. Public trial at sunset." His voice was rough. "And someone check the girl. Make sure she's not hurt." Warriors moved to obey. Vera was dragged away, still choking, her broken wrist hanging at an ugly angle. Lyra knelt beside the child, checking for injuries. The girl was shaking but alive, unharmed except for the thin cut on her throat. "You're safe now," Lyra whispered. "I promise. You're safe." The girl threw her arms around Lyra's neck and sobbed. Over the child's head, Lyra met Kael's eyes. He looked hollowed out, gutted. "You should have let me kill her," he said quietly. "Maybe, but then you'd never forgive yourself." "I might not anyway." Before Lyra could respond, Thorn approached, his expression grim. "My king." "There's something you need to know." Kael straightened. "What?" Vera wasn't working alone. We just found evidence in her quarters. Letters, plans, a whole network of conspirators still embedded in the pack. Thorn's jaw tightened. She was telling the truth about one thing. Marcus did promise her power. And she's been recruiting others who felt the same way. Wolves who think strength matters more than law. How many? At least 30, maybe more. They're scattered throughout the garrison, the council, even the civilian ranks. Thorn looked sick. We've been compromised from the inside, and if they realize their leader's been captured, an explosion rocked the courtyard. Not close. Somewhere deeper in the complex, but loud enough to make everyone flinch. Smoke began pouring from the eastern wing. "Fire!" someone shouted. "The barracks are on fire!" Chaos erupted, warriors running toward the smoke, civilians screaming, the careful order of the last few minutes dissolving into panic. Kael grabbed Thorn. "Get everyone out of that wing, now! I don't care if you have to drag them. No one dies in that fire." "What about you?" I'm going after whoever said it. Kale turned to Lyra. Stay here. With Vera's people still active, you're a target. Not a chance. Lyra was already moving. We do this together, remember? His jaw clenched. Then he nodded. They ran toward the smoke, the bond humming between them like a live wire. The eastern wing was an inferno. Flames licked up stone walls that shouldn't burn, fed by something that smelled wrong. Accelerant, oil, something chemical. Through the smoke, Lyra saw figures moving. Not fleeing, setting more fires, coordinated, deliberate. There, she pointed. Kael saw them too. 5 wolves in human form, carrying torches, and what looked like barrels of oil. They worked with military precision, spreading the fire, cutting off escape routes. They're trying to trap people inside, Kael realized. Force us to choose, save civilians or stop the conspiracy. One of the arsonists looked up, saw Kael. His eyes went wide. Then he threw his torch into a barrel of oil. The explosion was massive, heat and force, and screaming metal as the entire corridor went up in flames. Lyra felt herself lifted off her feet, thrown backward, hit the ground hard enough to see stars. Through the ringing in her ears, she heard Kael shouting her name. Then hands grabbed her, not gentle, yanking her up, twisting her arm behind her back. Got her, someone yelled. Through the smoke, more figures emerged, wolves loyal to Vera, at least a dozen of them. Kael spun, blade already in hand, but they had Lyra between them and him, a knife pressed against her throat. Drop it, the wolf holding her snarled, or she dies right here. Kael's face went absolutely cold. Let her go. Can't do that. Vera's orders. We take the girl, use her to draw you out, kill you both, and blame it on the fire. The knife pressed harder. Should have killed her when you had the chance. The bond flared with Kael's rage, so hot and violent it made Lyra's vision blur. Last warning, Kael said quietly. Release her, or I tear you all apart. The wolf holding Lyra laughed. You're outnumbered, surrounded. Your mate's one cut away from bleeding out. So how about you? Lyra drove her elbow backward into his ribs as hard as she could. The wolf grunted, his grip loosening for just a second. It was enough. Kael moved like death itself. His blade found the first wolf's throat before the man could react. Then he was among them, cutting through conspirators with mechanical efficiency. Lyra rolled away from her captor, grabbed the knife he'd dropped, and drove it into his leg. He screamed and went down. Then she was back on her feet, searching for Kael through the smoke and chaos. She found him standing over 3 bodies, breathing hard, his eyes wild. We have to go, he said. More will be coming. They know we're here now. Where? The old safe room, below the throne room. It's defensible. We can regroup, figure out how many of Vera's people are actually... Another explosion, this one right above them. The ceiling cracked. Stone groaned. Run! Kael grabbed her hand and they bolted as the corridor collapsed behind them. They ran through smoke and flames, past burning walls and screaming people. Kael pulled civilians from the fire when they could, shouting directions to the nearest exits. But the conspirators were everywhere, setting fires, attacking guards, spreading chaos with brutal efficiency. They made it to the throne room through a side passage. The space was empty now, abandoned in the chaos. At the far end, behind the throne itself, Kael triggered a hidden mechanism. A section of floor slid aside, revealing stairs leading down. Inside, he ordered. Lyra descended into darkness. Kael followed, sealing the entrance behind them. They stood in pitch black for a moment. Then Kael lit a small oil lamp, revealing a room maybe 15 feet across. Stone walls, no windows. A few supplies stacked in the corner, water, dried food, weapons. We're trapped, Lyra said. We're safe, for now. Kael set the lamp down. This room was built to withstand sieges. They can't break in without explosives, and if they try, the whole throne room comes down on top of them. So we just wait? We wait until Thorn puts down the uprising, until the fires are contained, until... He stopped. His eyes went distant. Kael? What's wrong? The bond. His voice was strained. There's something wrong with the bond. Lyra felt it too. A pulling sensation, like someone tugging on a string attached to her heart. Not painful, not yet, but wrong. What is that? I don't know. I've never felt... Kael's knees buckled. He caught himself against the wall. Fuck. Something's severing it. Someone's trying to break our bond. Terror flooded through Lyra. That's not possible. Once a bond is established, it's permanent. Nothing can... Old magic can. Kael's face was gray. Blood rituals. The kind Marcus studied. The kind Vera must have learned from him. He looked at her, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw genuine fear in his eyes. If they complete the ritual, the bond breaks. You become unclaimed, and I... He collapsed. Lyra caught him, lowering him to the ground. His skin was ice cold, his breathing shallow. No, 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 no! She pressed her hands to his chest, trying to channel power through the bond like she had before. But the bond was fraying. She could feel it unraveling, strand by strand, like rope being cut one fiber at a time. Lyra. Kael's hand found hers. Listen, you have to get out of here. Find Thorn. Tell him, I'm not leaving you. You have to. Once the bond breaks completely, I'll be too weak to fight. They'll kill me. But if you run now, if you get to safety... Shut up. Lyra's voice broke. Just shut up. I'm not running. I'm not leaving. We're bonded, remember? For better or worse. In strength or weakness. That was the whole point. This wasn't supposed to happen. You were supposed to be safe. Nothing about this has gone the way it was supposed to. She cupped his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. But I chose you. I keep choosing you. So if our bond is breaking, we fix it. Together. There's no fixing this. The ritual, then we break the ritual. Stop whoever's performing it. You don't even know where they are. Don't know what you're looking for. His breathing was getting worse. Please, just go. Live. That's all I... The bond severed completely. Lyra felt it like a physical blow. 1 second there was a connection between them, warm and solid and real. The next, nothing. Empty space where Kael's presence should have been. She gasped, doubling over from the sudden absence. Kael went limp in her arms, unconscious. For a moment, Lyra couldn't move. Couldn't think. The loss of the bond left her feeling hollowed out, like something vital had been carved from her chest. Then rage hit. Hot, clean, absolutely certain. They'd taken her mate, broken something that should have been unbreakable. Turned the one good thing she'd managed to find in this nightmare into another weapon to control her. No, not this time. Lyra stood, leaving Kael propped against the wall. She grabbed a blade from the weapon cache, checked it was sharp, then moved to the hidden door. She had no idea where the ritual was happening, no idea who was performing it, no training for what she was about to do. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She was going to find whoever broke their bond, and she was going to make them... Lyra pushed through the hidden door and into hell. Smoke choked the throne room. Flames crawled up the ancient tapestries, eating history one thread at a time. The heat was unbearable, turning the air into something solid that burned her lungs with each breath. She didn't care. The bond was gone. Kael was dying, and someone in this burning complex had the answers she needed. She ran through corridors she'd known her whole life, now transformed into a maze of fire and collapsing stone. Bodies littered the ground, some conspirators, some loyalists, impossible to tell them apart in the chaos. A figure stumbled out of the smoke ahead, one of Vera's wolves, his face blackened with soot. You, Lyra snarled. Where's the ritual? Where are they breaking the bonds? He blinked at her, dazed. What? She grabbed his collar, slammed him against the wall. The blood ritual, the one severing mate bonds. Where? I'm just setting fires. I don't know about any... Lyra's knife pressed against his throat. Wrong answer. His eyes went wide. The old temple, below ground. That's where Vera said, that's where the real work happens. She released him, and he collapsed, coughing. The old temple. The same ruins where they'd fought Marcus's assassins last night. Of course. Ancient ground, old magic. The perfect place for forbidden rituals. Lyra ran. Through the burning complex, downstairs slick with blood, past warriors fighting in tight knots of brutal close combat. Nobody tried to stop her. They were all too busy trying to survive. She burst out into open air, gasping, her lungs screaming. The temple ruins were 100 yards across the courtyard, half hidden by smoke from the fires. She sprinted toward them, her legs burning, that hollow ache where the bond used to be driving her forward like a whip. The temple entrance yawned ahead, dark and ominous. Lyra didn't slow. She plunged into the shadows, taking the same carved handholds down into the underground chamber where Kael had fought off pursuers the night before. Her feet hit dirt. The chamber opened up around her, vast, ancient, the ceiling lost in darkness overhead. And at the center, around a circle carved into the stone floor, stood 5 robed figures. They chanted in a language Lyra didn't recognize. In the middle of the circle lay something that made her stomach lurch. A wolf, already dead, its throat cut, blood pooling in channels carved into the stone. Blood magic, the kind that had been forbidden for generations. One of the robed figures looked up, pulled back their hood. Senna. "Well," her former friend said, smiling that ugly smile. "Look who found us. I was hoping you would." Lyra's grip tightened on her blade. "Stop the ritual, now." "Or what? You'll fight all 5 of us alone?" Senna laughed. "You're not even a proper wolf, Lyra. You've never been strong enough to hold dominance, never been trained to fight. What exactly do you think you're going to do?" "Whatever it takes." The other 4 figures pulled back their hoods. Lyra recognized 2 of them, garrison warriors who'd knelt to Kael just hours ago. The other 2 were strangers. "The ritual's almost complete," Senna continued conversationally. "Another few minutes and every bond formed in the last day will break, including yours. Your precious king will die from the severing, and you'll be free to choose again. Maybe Gareth, if he survives. Maybe someone stronger." "I already chose." "You chose wrong. Chose a dead king over a living future." Senna gestured to the circle. "This is mercy, really. We're giving you another chance, a reset. When this is over, you can bond with someone worthy, someone who won't drag you into pointless wars and suicidal rebellions." Lyra took a step forward. "I said stop the ritual. Make me." The 4 other conspirators moved, fanning out to surround her. They didn't draw weapons, didn't need to. They were all stronger, faster, better trained. Lyra was going to die here, but Kael had taught her something in their short time together. Sometimes the only way forward was through the fear, through the pain, straight into the teeth of something that should kill you. She attacked, not with skill, not with training, just with desperation and rage and the absolute refusal to let Kael die because she wasn't strong enough. Her blade caught the first conspirator across the forearm. He yelped, stumbled back. The second one grabbed for her, and she twisted, bringing her knee up into his groin with everything she had. He went down hard. Then the other 2 were on her, hands grabbing, pulling, dragging her to the ground. She fought like a cornered animal, biting and clawing, her blade finding flesh wherever she could reach. Someone hit her. Hard. Stars exploded across her vision. When her sight cleared, she was on her back, 3 conspirators holding her down while the 4th clutched a bleeding side. Senna stood over her, looking almost disappointed. "That was stupid," she said. "Brave, maybe, but stupid." Lyra spat blood. "Fuck you. You had a chance to walk away, to let this happen, and save yourself." Senna crouched down, getting close. "But no. You had to be loyal, had to choose him over your own survival, just like he chose 3 years ago." Her smile turned cold. "Want to know a secret? The little girl who died from Marcus's poison? The servant's daughter? That was my sister." Lyra's breath caught. Marcus promised to make it quick, said she wouldn't suffer, but Kael had to play hero, had to try to save her, and she died screaming in his arms while he was too weak to help. Senna's voice dropped to a whisper. "I've waited 3 years to make him feel that same helplessness, to take everything from him the way he took everything from me. He didn't. That wasn't his fault, as he was the king. Everything was his fault." Senna stood. "Finish the ritual. I want to watch his bond break while she's still conscious. Want her to feel it happen." The chanting resumed, louder now, building to some kind of crescendo. Lyra struggled against the hands holding her, accomplishing nothing. She could feel something building in the air, pressure, wrongness, like reality itself was being bent into shapes it wasn't meant to hold. The ritual was working. In the safe room, Kael was dying, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Then a howl split the air. Not a wolf's howl, something else, something massive and ancient that made the stone beneath them vibrate. The conspirators froze, their chanting faltering. The howl came again, closer now, followed by the thunder of paws hitting earth. "What is that?" one of the conspirators whispered. The answer came in the form of a wolf bursting through the temple entrance, but not any wolf Lyra had ever seen. This one was the size of a horse, its fur black as midnight, eyes burning gold. An alpha in full transformation, the kind that only happened when a wolf gave up everything human and let the beast take complete control. Kael. The massive wolf landed in the center of the chamber, placing itself between Lyra and the conspirators. It didn't growl, didn't posture, just stood there radiating such raw dominance that two of the robed figures collapsed to their knees immediately, unable to resist the pressure. "Impossible," Senna breathed. "The ritual. You should be dead." The wolf's eyes locked on her. When it spoke, the voice was Kael's, but deeper, rougher, filtered through a throat not built for human speech. "You broke our bond," he said. "Thought that would kill me. Thought I was weak enough to die from the severing. You should be... I survived poison that should have killed me. Survived 3 years in the wasteland. Survived betrayal and assassination and every attempt to destroy me." The wolf took a step forward, and Senna stumbled back. "You think losing a day-old bond would be enough? I've lived with worse pain for years." The conspirators holding Lyra released her, backing away from the massive predator now stalking toward them. Lyra scrambled to her feet, her body aching, blood running from a dozen cuts. "Kyle!" "I'm fine." The wolf didn't look at her, didn't break eye contact with Senna. "But they're not going to be." He moved. The transformation from stillness to violence was instantaneous. 1 second, the wolf stood 20 feet away. The next, it was among the conspirators, jaws closing around the first one's throat and tearing it out in a spray of arterial red. The others tried to run. Didn't matter. The wolf was faster. It caught the second conspirator mid-stride, crushing his spine with one bite. The third tried to shift, to fight back in wolf form, but Kael was already there, his massive jaws closing around her skull. Bone cracked. The conspirator went limp. That left Senna. She stood frozen in the center of the ritual circle, knife clutched in shaking hands, her face gone white as bone. The wolf stalked toward her, blood dripping from its muzzle, those golden eyes burning with something that went beyond rage into pure, focused hatred. "Please," Senna whispered. "Please, it wasn't supposed to—" "You killed your own sister's memory," Kael's voice rumbled. "Used her death as an excuse for murder, for treason, for breaking bonds that should be sacred. She died because of you. She died because Marcus poisoned her. Because you weren't strong enough to accept that sometimes people die, and it's nobody's fault." The wolf was close now, so close Senna could probably feel its breath. "But you wanted someone to blame, someone to hurt, so you chose me. You abandoned us." "I was hunting the people who killed her, who killed dozens of others, who were rotting this pack from the inside." Kael's voice dropped to something almost sad. "I could have been your ally, could have helped you heal. Instead, you chose revenge. I chose justice. You chose to become the thing you hated most." The wolf's head lowered, jaws opening. "And now you answer for it." "Kael, wait," Lyra's voice cut through the chamber. The wolf paused, turning those golden eyes toward her. She walked forward on shaking legs, her whole body screaming at her to run from the predator in front of her. But she forced herself to approach, to stand beside the massive wolf, to put herself between it and Senna. "Don't kill her like this," Lyra said quietly. "Not in rage. Not in this form. You'll regret it later. She tried to kill you, tried to kill me. Succeeded in murdering 3 people tonight. I know, and she deserves to answer for that. But not like this. Not with you losing control." Lyra put her hand on the wolf's massive head, feeling coarse fur and the heat of barely restrained violence. "Come back. Be the king, not the monster. Please." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the wolf's form began to shimmer, bones cracking, reforming, shrinking, fur receding. When the transformation finished, Kael knelt in the dirt, naked and covered in blood, breathing hard. He looked up at Senna with eyes that were human again, but no less fierce. "You're going to stand trial," he said, his voice rough. in front of the entire pack. They'll hear what you did, what you planned, and they'll decide your fate. He stood slowly, accepting the cloak Lyra draped over his shoulders. That's justice, real justice, not revenge dressed up in ritual magic. Senna's knife clattered to the ground. She collapsed, sobbing. Footsteps echoed from the temple entrance. Thorn appeared, leading a squad of warriors, all of them armed and covered in soot from the fires. "My king!" The old warrior's eyes widened, taking in the carnage. "We heard the howl. Thought you were—" "I'm fine." Kael's hand found Lyra's, gripping tight. "The uprising?" "Contained. Most of the conspirators are dead or captured. The fires are being brought under control." Thorn's gaze fell on Senna. "Is she alive for now? Take her. Put her in the deepest cell we have. I want guards on her around the clock." Warriors moved to obey, hauling Senna to her feet and dragging her away. She didn't resist, just stared at Kael with empty eyes as they led her past. When they were gone, Thorn approached Kael carefully. "The pack is asking for you," he said quietly. "They need to see you, need to know you're still alive and in control." "I know." Kael's shoulders sagged. "Give me an hour. To clean up, to—" He looked at Lyra. "To fix what they broke." Thorn nodded and withdrew, leaving them alone in the chamber surrounded by bodies and the lingering smell of blood magic. Lyra turned to face Kael fully. "The bond. Can we restore it?" "Yes, but it won't be the same." His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing across her cheek. "It'll be stronger, deliberate, a choice we both make with full knowledge of what it means. Then let's do it." "You don't have to. The ritual broke the bond cleanly. You're free. You could walk away from all this. Find someone safer, someone who won't drag you into wars and conspiracies and—" Lyra kissed him. It was nothing like their first kiss in the arena, that desperate gamble born of panic. This one was certain, absolute, a promise made with full understanding of its weight. When she pulled back, Kael's eyes were wide. "I choose you," she said firmly. "Not because I'm trapped, not because of some bond I didn't understand. I choose you because you're trying to build something better, because you show mercy when you could show violence, because you came back for me when you should have saved yourself." She took his hand, placed it over her heart. "So bond with me, for real this time, as equals, as partners." His forehead pressed against hers. "You're insane." "You keep saying that." "It keeps being true." Despite everything, the bodies, the blood, the exhaustion, they both almost smiled. Then Kael's hand moved to the back of her neck, and power flooded through the touch. Not forceful, not dominating, an offering, a question. Lyra's wolf rose to meet it, and this time she understood what was happening, could feel the bond forming strand by strand, weaving them together with a strength that had nothing to do with magic and everything to do with choice. The bond snapped into place, different from before, deeper, like finding a piece of herself she hadn't known was missing. Through it, she felt Kael's exhaustion, his pain, his determination to see this through to the end, and underneath it all, something warm and fierce that might have been love or might just have been absolute certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. "We should go," Kael murmured against her hair. "The pack is waiting." "Let them wait another minute." Lyra held him tighter, feeling his heartbeat against her chest. "Just another minute." They stood like that in the chamber of the dead, two wolves bonded by choice rather than fate, while above them the pack burned and rebuilt itself in equal measure. Finally, Kael pulled back. "Come on. Time to face what comes next." They climbed out of the underground chamber together. The courtyard had transformed while they were below, organized chaos as warriors fought fires, healers tended wounded, and pack members began the work of sorting loyal from traitor. Every eye turned to them as they emerged, Kael in a borrowed cloak, still covered in blood. Lyra at his side, battered and bruised, but standing tall. The crowd parted as they walked toward the throne room. Warriors dropped to one knee. Civilians bowed their heads. Even the wounded struggled to show respect. This was what a king looked like, Lyra realized. Not perfect, not unscathed, just unbroken despite everything thrown at him. They reached the throne room to find it still smoking but structurally intact. The throne itself stood untouched, waiting. Kyle stopped before it, turned to address the crowd that had followed them inside. 3 years ago, he said, his voice carrying across the space, I disappeared. Let you think I was dead. I told myself it was necessary, that I needed to hunt traitors in secret, that my absence would draw them out. Silence. Everyone listening. I was wrong. A king doesn't abandon his people, no matter how good the reason, doesn't leave them to suffer while he fights shadows in the wasteland. His hand found Lyra's. I came back tonight ready to take my throne by force, to execute every traitor and rule through fear. I was wrong about that too. He gestured to Lyra. This woman, this beta-rank wolf who should have been claimed and broken by a warlord, she chose differently, kissed a beggar rather than submit to a monster, and in doing that she showed me what I'd forgotten. Kale's voice strengthened. Strength isn't about dominance, it's about choice, about giving people the freedom to decide their own fate and standing by them when they make those choices. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. So here's my promise, Kyle continued. No more forced bonds, no more rigged ceremonies. Every wolf in this pack gets to choose their mate or choose to remain unclaimed. No exceptions, no pressure, just freedom. And those who abuse that freedom, someone called from the back, who use it to hurt others, they answer to the law. A law will write together. Pack council, civilian representatives, everyone gets a voice. Kale's eyes swept across them. This is still a pack. We still need hierarchy, need leadership, need strength to hold our territory. But that strength comes from unity, not fear, from choosing to stand together rather than being forced into line. Thorn stepped forward. And the warlords? Gareth and the others who surrendered? Public trial, tomorrow at sunset. The pack will hear the charges, will decide the punishment. Kale's jaw tightened. I'm done making those decisions alone. More murmurs, these ones sounding almost hopeful. Then an older woman near the front spoke up. What about Lyra? You say she's your mate, but she's beta rank. No dominance, no combat training. How can she stand beside an alpha king? Lyra felt every eye turn to her, felt the weight of judgment, of centuries of tradition that said she wasn't strong enough, wasn't worthy enough. Kyle's hand squeezed hers. Through the bond, she felt his absolute faith in her. She stepped forward. You're right, she said clearly. I'm not strong. I can't hold dominance. I've never won a fight in my life. She lifted her chin. But I faced down Gareth Kane in front of this entire pack. I walked into a burning building to stop a ritual that was killing my mate. I stood between an alpha king in full transformation and his prey because mercy mattered more than revenge. She paused, letting that sink in. Strength isn't just about who can bite the hardest. It's about who stands up when it matters. Who makes the hard choices? Who fights for what's right even when they're terrified? Lyra met the woman's eyes. I'll never be the strongest wolf in this pack, but I'll be the one standing beside your king, making sure he remembers that every decision affects real people with real lives, making sure he stays the man you need, not the monster you fear. Silence. Then someone started clapping. Slowly at first. Then others joined in. Within seconds, the entire throne room was applauding. Lyra's throat tightened. She looked at Kyle, who was staring at her with something like wonder. See? He murmured. Insane! Takes one to know one. The moment stretched. Then Thorn cleared his throat. My king. There's still the matter of Gareth and the surviving warlords. They're being held in the detention wing, but he hesitated. Gareth is demanding to speak with you, says he has information you need to hear. Kale's expression went cold. What kind of information? He wouldn't say. Just that if you want to stop what's really coming, you'll listen to what he has to say. Through the bond, Lyra felt Kyle's suspicion, his anger, his bone-deep exhaustion. It's a trap, she said quietly. Has to be. Probably. But if there's even a chance he knows something. Kyle looked at Thorn. Take me to him, but I want a full guard detail. Nobody gets in or out of that room without my permission. My king. Now, Thorn. The old warrior bowed and led the way. They descended into the detention wing, a series of cells carved into the bedrock beneath the pack complex. The air down here was cold, damp, smelling of mold and old fear. Gareth sat in the deepest cell, still in the clothes he'd worn to the ceremony, now torn and blood-stained. Someone had chained his hands and feet to the wall, leaving him barely able to move. He looked up when they approached, and his smile was all teeth. Well, well, the happy couple. His eyes raked over Lyra with an expression that made her skin crawl. You look like shit, girl. King not treating you right. Shut up, Kael said flatly. Thorn said you have information. Talk. That's not how this works. I give you something, you give me something. Gareth's chains rattled as he shifted. A trade. Information for freedom. You're not getting freedom. You rigged the ceremonies, helped murder my council, tried to turn this pack into your personal hunting ground. Kael's voice was ice. You're lucky you're getting a trial instead of an execution. Am I? Gareth laughed. Because from where I'm sitting, you're the one who's fucked. You think tonight was the conspiracy? Think Marcus and Vera were the whole problem? He leaned forward as far as his chains allowed. This goes deeper than you know, dead king. Deeper than this pack. And if you don't listen to what I have to say, you're going to lose everything you just fought to save. Kael and Lyra exchanged a glance. Talk, Kael ordered. Fast, before I change my mind. The ceremonies weren't about control. They were about breeding. Gareth's smile widened at their confusion. Marcus didn't just want to rule Thornridge. He wanted to build an army, so he started pairing strong alphas with specific females, ones who carried dormant bloodlines, ancient genetics that could produce wolves with abilities normal packs haven't seen in generations. Lyra's blood ran cold. You're lying, Kael said, but his voice lacked conviction. Am I? Then explain why every female Marcus selected had family lines going back to the founding packs. Why their genetic profiles showed markers for abilities like true shape-shifting, elemental affinity, pack-wide telepathy. Gareth's eyes gleamed. He was trying to breed superwolves, and he was succeeding. That's impossible. Those abilities are myths, are they? Because I've seen them. Seen wolves who could hold animal form for days without shifting back. Seen others who could share thoughts across miles. Seen a child, maybe 5 years old, who could call fire with nothing but will. Gareth tilted his head. Where do you think all those disappeared females went? The ones who ran away after rejecting their mates? They didn't run. They were taken. Bred. Used to create the next generation of Marcus's army. Kael's hand had moved to his blade. Where? That's the trade. I tell you where Marcus was keeping them, you let me walk. Simple. I could just torture it out of you. You could try. But I was trained by Marcus himself to resist interrogation. You'd kill me before I broke. Gareth's smile never wavered. So deal. Information for freedom. Take it or leave it. Through the bond, Lyra felt Kael's internal war, his desire to gut Gareth where he sat, versus his desperate need to find those missing females, to stop whatever nightmare Marcus had set in motion. How do I know you're telling the truth? Kael asked finally. You don't. But ask yourself, why would I lie about this? What do I gain from making up a story about breeding programs and missing wolves? Gareth's expression turned serious. I was a monster, I admit that. But Marcus? He was something worse. And if you don't stop what he started, it won't matter that you reclaimed your throne. His creation will destroy everything anyway. Silence filled the cell, heavy and suffocating. Lyra put her hand on Kael's arm. We can't trust him. I know, but we can't ignore this either. I know that too. Kael's jaw clenched so hard she heard it crack. He turned to Gareth. Here's my counteroffer. You tell me where the breeding facility is. If we find it and it's real, you get life imprisonment instead of execution. You lie, I come back down here and tear you apart with my bare hands. Those are the terms. Take them or die right now. Gareth studied him for a long moment. Then he sighed. Fine, your terms. He rattled his chains. The facility is 3 days northwest, old mining complex in the mountains. Marcus converted it into a research station, laboratories, holding cells, the works. Last I heard, there were maybe 30 females there, some pregnant, some with children already. Guard detail? 20 warriors, all fanatics loyal to Marcus's vision. They'll fight to the death rather than surrender. Kael turned to Thorn. Assemble a strike team, our best fighters. We leave at dawn. My king, you're exhausted. You need to rest, There are women and children being held captive and used for breeding experiments. We're not waiting. Kael's voice was absolute. Dawn, be ready. Thorn bowed and withdrew. Kael looked down at Gareth one more time. If you're lying, if this is some kind of trap. It's not. I'm many things, but I'm not suicidal. Gareth leaned back against the wall. Go save them, dead king. Prove you're better than Marcus, better than me, better than all of us who failed them. They left him chained in the darkness. Outside the cell, Lyra grabbed Kyle's arm. This feels wrong. Everything about this feels wrong. But we don't have a choice. He pulled her close, pressing his forehead against hers. If there are females out there, females we failed to protect, we have to try. And if it's a trap, then we spring it together and fight our way out. His lips brushed hers, gentle despite the violence still clinging to them both. Together. That's the promise, right? Together, she agreed. But as they climbed back up to the throne room, as Kael began organizing the strike team, and Lyra tried not to collapse from exhaustion, she couldn't shake the feeling that Gareth had just played them, that they were walking into something far worse than a simple rescue mission, that tomorrow, when they rode into those mountains, they'd find dawn broke cold and merciless over the mountains. Lyra sat on her horse at the edge of the encampment, watching the sun bleed across jagged peaks that looked like broken teeth against the sky. Behind her, 20 warriors prepared for what might be their last ride, checking weapons, tightening armor, saying quiet goodbyes to mates who'd come to see them off. Kael stood apart from the others, studying a crude map Gareth had provided. His face was carved from stone, unreadable, but through the bond, Lyra felt everything. His exhaustion, his doubt, the weight of leading people into danger based on the word of a man who'd tried to destroy them all. She dismounted and crossed to him. You haven't slept, she said quietly. Neither have you. I asked first. Despite everything, his mouth twitched, almost a smile. Can't sleep. Keep thinking about what we might find up there. Women and children who need saving. Or a trap that kills us all. Kael's eyes met hers, and for once the king's mask slipped. What if Gareth lied? What if I'm leading these warriors to their deaths chasing a ghost? Then we die trying to save people who might need us. That's better than doing nothing because we're afraid. Lyra took his hand. You taught me that. Back in the arena, when you could have run but stayed to fight. When you chose to show mercy instead of vengeance. Look where that got us. Burned complex. Dead conspirators. A pack barely held together by threats and promises. A pack that's free. That gets to choose. That has a king who cares more about doing right than being feared. She squeezed his fingers. That's worth fighting for. Worth dying for if it comes to that. Kael pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. I don't deserve you. Good thing you don't get to decide that. He kissed her then, soft and desperate and tasting like goodbye. When they pulled apart, Thorn approached on horseback, his scarred face grim. We're ready, my king. Kael nodded, released Lyra, mounted his own horse with the fluid grace of someone who'd been born to ride. Stay close to me, he told her as she climbed into her saddle. If this goes bad, I know, run, save myself. You've said it a dozen times. Lyra settled her reins. I'm not going to listen this time either. I know. They rode. The mountains swallowed them, narrow trails winding between cliffs that dropped into nothing, paths so treacherous the horses had to pick their way one careful step at a time. The air grew thinner, colder, until every breath burned and Lyra's hands went numb inside her gloves. 3 hours in, they found the first body. A female wolf, maybe 20 years old, lying in a ravine with her throat cut. She'd been dead for days, maybe longer, her body preserved by the mountain cold. Thorn dismounted to examine her. No identification, but she's wearing pack colors. Thornridge. One of the missing females, Kael said, his voice flat. She tried to run. Didn't make it far. They left her there, marked the spot for retrieval later, and kept riding. 2 hours after that, they found the facility. It sat in a valley carved between 3 peaks, partially hidden by an outcropping of rock that made it invisible from most angles. Old mining buildings converted into something else. New construction, reinforced walls, guard towers that had no business existing this far from civilization. Kael held up a hand. Everyone stopped. There. He pointed to movement along the perimeter. Guards. At least 6 visible, probably more inside. Gareth said 20, Thorn muttered. We're outnumbered. We've been outnumbered before. Cale studied the facility, his tactical mind working through possibilities. 2 teams. Thorn, you take 10 and hit the front entrance hard and loud. Draw their attention. I'll take the rest through the back, find the prisoners, get them out. That leaves you with 9 warriors against unknown opposition in an unfamiliar building. I know. It's suicide. It's the mission. Cale's eyes were cold. We didn't come here to fight fair. We came here to save lives. Thorn's jaw worked. Then he nodded. As you command. They split up. Lyra stayed with Kael's group as they circled wide, using the rocky terrain for cover. The Bond hummed with his focus, his readiness, the cold calculation of someone who'd done this 100 times before. They reached the back of the facility, a reinforced door set into the mountainside, guarded by 2 warriors who looked bored. Kael gestured. 2 of his wolves moved forward, silent as death. The guards went down without making a sound. Then they were inside, moving through corridors that smelled of chemicals and something worse. Fear, pain, desperation soaked into the walls. The first room they found was empty except for medical equipment. The second held cages. Empty cages with restraints still attached. The third room made Lyra's stomach turn. A laboratory. Examination tables with straps. Syringes lined up in neat rows. Charts on the walls tracking bloodlines, genetic markers, breeding schedules. And in the corner, a small body covered with a sheet. Kael pulled back the sheet, looked. His face went absolutely white. What? Lyra whispered. A child. Maybe 3 years old. His voice was barely audible. Dead from what looks like failed experiments. Lyra felt bile rise in her throat. Then alarms started screaming. They know we're here, one of Kael's warriors hissed. Thorn must have engaged. Find the prisoners, Kael ordered. Fast, before they... Gunfire erupted from somewhere ahead. Not the clash of blades. Actual firearms, the kind Pax hadn't used in generations. Shit, Kael breathed. They're armed with human weapons. Fall back, we need to... A door at the far end of the corridor burst open. Warriors poured through, not 20, more like 30, all carrying rifles and moving with military precision. Contact, someone shouted. Then everything dissolved into chaos. Bullets tore through the corridor. Kael's wolves shifted, trying to use speed and animal form to close the distance. But the gunfire was too concentrated, too disciplined. 2 of their warriors went down in the first volley. Back! Kael roared. Fall back to the... An explosion rocked the building. The ceiling cracked, raining debris. Through the smoke and chaos, Lyra saw him, a figure in black body armor, face hidden behind a tactical mask, directing the armed warriors with hand signals. Not Marcus. Marcus was dead. Someone else. Someone who'd been running this nightmare in his absence. The figure's eyes found Kael across the chaos. Even through the mask, Lyra saw recognition. Then the figure pulled off the mask. Lyra's world stopped. The face beneath was scarred, older, harder, but unmistakable. Vera. Impossible, Kael breathed. We captured you. Put you in chains. You captured a decoy. Vera's voice carried across the gunfire. Did you really think I'd be stupid enough to perform the ritual myself? To put myself in reach of an Alpha King? She laughed, harsh and ugly. I've been here the whole time, running the real operation while you chased shadows. She gestured, and her warriors advanced, rifles raised. This facility is just one of 6, Vera continued conversationally, like she wasn't ordering an execution. Marcus built them all over the territory. Breeding programs, genetic experiments, everything he needed to create an army that could challenge even the strongest packs. Her eyes glittered. And when he died, I inherited it all. The research, the subjects, the vision. You're insane, Lyra said. I'm practical. Your precious king wants to rule through choice and freedom? Fine. Let him try. My wolves will be stronger, faster, better in every way. When they come of age, they'll sweep across this territory, and every pack that stands against them will fall. Vera's smile was terrible. You 2 are irrelevant. Obstacles to be removed. She raised her hand to signal the kill order. Kael moved. He shifted mid-leap, his massive wolf form crashing into the nearest armed warrior and using the man's body as a shield against the bullets. Then he was among them, jaws and claws tearing through soldiers too slow to track him. The rest of his team followed, shifting and attacking with desperate ferocity. Lyra pressed herself against the wall, trying to stay out of the line of fire. She had no training for this, no ability to fight trained soldiers with military weapons. But she had the bond. She closed her eyes and reached for it, pulling on Kael's strength the way she had in the courtyard. Power flooded through her, not as much as before, but enough. Her wolf surged forward. The shift was agony, bones breaking and reforming, but she gritted her teeth and let it happen. When she opened her eyes, the world looked different, sharper. Every scent distinct, every heartbeat a drum in her ears. She launched herself at the nearest armed warrior, using speed instead of strength, going for his weapon hand. Her jaws closed around his wrist and she wrenched, feeling bones snap. He screamed and dropped the rifle. She was already moving, using his falling body as a springboard to reach the next one. Around her, Kyle's team was being cut down. Too many enemies, too much firepower. They'd never faced anything like this. But they fought anyway, because surrender meant death, and death meant the prisoners stayed trapped forever. Lyra found herself back-to-back with Kael's wolf form, both of them bleeding, both panting with exhaustion. Through the bond, she felt his determination, his absolute refusal to stop until every last prisoner was free or he was dead trying. She felt something else too, a decision forming. No, she tried to say, but it came out as a growl. Kael's wolf turned its massive head to look at her. Those golden eyes were sad, apologetic. Then he howled, that same ancient massive sound that had shaken the throne room, and charged straight at Vera. Every gun turned toward him. Lyra screamed and ran after him, knowing she was too slow, too weak, too late. The gunfire was deafening. Kael's wolf form staggered. Blood sprayed from a dozen wounds. But he kept moving, kept charging, his jaws reaching for Vera's throat. She tried to dodge. Wasn't fast enough. The massive wolf's jaws closed around her neck. One bite, one crushing motion. Vera's body went limp. Then Kael collapsed, his wolf form shimmering and shrinking back to human. No! Lyra shifted back to human, her hands already reaching for him. No, no, no! The facility's warriors had frozen, staring at their dead commander. Some dropped their weapons, others backed away. Thorn burst through the far door with his team, taking in the carnage. "Secure them!" he barked, gesturing to the enemy soldiers. "Anyone who resists, put them down." But Lyra barely heard him. She cradled Kael's head in her lap, her hands trying uselessly to stop the bleeding from wounds too numerous to count. "Stay with me," she whispered. "Please. We just got started. We were going to build something better, remember? You don't get to die now." Kael's eyes fluttered open. Blood bubbled at his lips when he tried to speak. "The prisoners," he managed. "Find them. Get them. Fuck the prisoners. You're dying. Then I die. But they live." His hand found hers, slick with blood. "Promise me. Get them out. All of them. No one left behind." "I promise. But you have to promise me something too." Lyra's voice broke. "You have to promise you'll survive this. That you'll fight. That you won't give up because you think you deserve to die for failing them." He coughed, spraying red. "Can't promise that." "Try anyway, you stubborn bastard." Despite the pain, despite the blood, he almost smiled. Then his eyes rolled back and he went still. The bond flickered, weakened, started to fade. "No." Lyra pressed her hands over his heart, feeling the irregular flutter. "You don't get to leave me. Not after everything. Not after—" She stopped thinking, just acted, pouring everything she had through the bond. Her strength, her will, her absolute refusal to let him go. It was crude, desperate, nothing like the careful healing she'd done before. But it was enough. Kael's heart steadied under her hands, his breathing evened out. The worst of the bleeding slowed. He wouldn't die. Not today. But he also wouldn't wake up anytime soon. Thorn appeared beside her. "My queen." "Don't call me that. Just help me move him somewhere safe." Lyra's voice was raw. And find those prisoners, all of them. That's what he'd want. Already done. We found them 2 levels down. 32 females, 11 children. Thorn's face was grim, some in bad shape, but alive. Get them ready to move. We're leaving as soon as Kael can be transported. The enemy soldiers, take them prisoner. Any who want to surrender, we accept. The rest? She looked at the bodies scattered across the corridor. The rest made their choice. It took 4 hours to prepare the evacuation. The prisoners were in worse shape than Thorn had indicated, malnourished, traumatized, some barely able to walk. The children clung to their mothers, silent and hollow-eyed. Lyra moved among them, offering what comfort she could, learning names, promising safety, trying not to see the accusation in their eyes. Where were you? Why didn't you come sooner? How could you let this happen? She had no answers, just apologies that felt inadequate, and promises she wasn't sure she could keep. By the time they started the journey back, the sun was setting. Kael remained unconscious, strapped to a litter carried between 2 horses. The bond pulsed weakly, but it pulsed. He was alive. That had to be enough. The ride down the mountain was slower, more careful. The rescued females needed frequent rest stops. The children cried. Some of the pregnant ones went into labor and had to be tended by their makeshift healers. It took them 2 full days to reach Thornridge. The pack had prepared for their return. Clean quarters for the prisoners, healers standing by, food, water, warm clothes, everything the rescued wolves would need to begin recovering. But when they rode through the gates, it wasn't celebration that greeted them. It was silence. The entire pack had turned out to watch. Hundreds of faces, all wearing expressions that ranged from shock to horror to shame, as they saw the emaciated females, the traumatized children, the physical evidence of what had been happening in their name. Lyra rode at the front of the column, her spine straight despite exhaustion. Kael's litter followed, and behind that, the rescued wolves, walking proof of failure that no amount of victory could erase. They stopped in the main courtyard. An older female stepped forward from the rescued group. She was maybe 40, her face lined with suffering, her body bearing the scars of repeated trauma. "I'm Helena," she said, her voice carrying across the silent courtyard. "I was taken 4 years ago, told my family I'd run away. Bred like livestock to produce children for Marcus's experiments." She gestured to the others behind her. "We all were. Some of us for years. And not one person came looking. Not one person questioned where we'd gone." The crowd shifted, uncomfortable. "You want to know the worst part?" Helena continued. "It's not the experiments, not the forced breeding, not even the children who died because their genetics weren't pure enough." Her eyes swept across the assembled pack. "It's that you all let it happen. Believed the lies about us running away, accepted that strong alphas could claim whoever they wanted and break them without consequence." Silence. Crushing and absolute. Then someone spoke from the crowd, the young girl who'd testified at the throne room, the one whose arm Corvin had broken. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice shaking. "I'm so sorry. We should have fought, should have questioned, should have doesn't save us," Helena interrupted. "Should have doesn't bring back the dead children, doesn't undo years of torture." "No," Lyra said, dismounting and stepping forward. "It doesn't. Nothing we say or do will ever make this right. But we can start trying." She turned to face the pack. "Today we see what our silence cost, what choosing comfort over courage created, and we decide right now that it never happens again." She gestured to the rescued wolves. "These women survived because they were strong enough to endure hell. Now they're home. And this pack, every single one of us, owes them not just safety, but dignity, respect, the freedom to choose what happens next, whether that's staying or leaving or anything in between." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "Some of you participated in this nightmare," Lyra continued. "Helped Marcus. Looked the way when females disappeared. Maybe even knew what was happening and stayed silent." Her voice hardened. "Those of you who did, you can come forward now, confess, and face trial. Or you can stay silent and live with that knowledge forever. Your choice." For a long moment, no one moved. Then a figure stepped out from the crowd, one of the garrison warriors, his face twisted with shame. "I knew," he said hoarsely, I helped transport females to the facilities, told myself it was orders, that I had no choice, but his voice broke. I knew, and I did it anyway. Others followed, one by one, wolves stepping forward to confess their complicity, some crying, some defiant, all of them carrying guilt that had finally become too heavy to hide. By the time the confessions ended, nearly 20 pack members stood apart from the rest, marked by their own admission. Thorn approached Lyra. What do you want to do with them? I don't decide, the survivors do. Lyra turned to Helena and the other rescued females. They're the ones who suffered. They get to choose what justice looks like. Helena studied the confessed conspirators for a long time. Then she said, I want them to work, to spend every day rebuilding what they helped destroy, building homes for displaced families, caring for orphaned children, making this pack into something worth belonging to. Her eyes were hard. And if they refuse, if they try to run or hide, then they face execution, not as punishment, as mercy for what they'll do to themselves if they don't find redemption. Agreed, Lyra said. Does anyone object? Silence. Then slowly, heads shook throughout the crowd. Then it settled. Lyra's voice rang across the courtyard. These 20 will work under supervision, rebuilding what they helped break. The rescued females will be given homes, resources, whatever they need to heal. And this pack, all of us, will learn what it means to choose courage over comfort. She paused, letting that sink in. One more thing, she continued. Starting tomorrow, we rewrite the pack laws. Together. Council members, civilians, warriors, everyone gets a voice. We build a system that protects the vulnerable instead of giving power to the strong. Her eyes swept across them. That's the vision. That's the promise. Anyone who can't live with that is free to leave. No judgment, no punishment, just leave. No one moved. Lyra nodded. Good. Then let's get started. The crowd began to disperse, many of them moving to help the rescued wolves, others gathering in quiet groups to process what they'd witnessed. Lyra returned to Kael's litter. He still hadn't woken, his face pale and still. Through the bond, she felt him fighting, felt his wolf struggling to heal the damage, to pull him back from the edge. Come back to me, she whispered, taking his cold hand. We've got work to do. Can't do it without you. His fingers twitched in hers. 3 days later, Kael woke. Lyra had been sitting beside his bed, reading reports about the facility. More horrors Marcus had documented, more victims they'd failed to save in time. She looked up to find those gray eyes watching her. Hey, she said softly. Hey. His voice was rough from disuse. Did we got them all out. 32 females, 11 children, all safe, all being cared for. And Vera? Dead. You killed her. Lyra set aside the reports. Almost died doing it, you reckless idiot. Had to, she was... I know. I was there, remember? Lyra took his hand. You kept your promise, saved the prisoners, stopped the experiments. Now you have to keep another one. What promise? The one where you don't die and leave me to fix this mess alone. Despite his weakness, Kael almost smiled. Demanding queen. I learned from a stubborn king. He pulled her closer, his lips finding hers in a kiss that tasted like gratitude and relief, and promises neither of them knew how to keep. When they broke apart, he said, What happens now? Now we rebuild, rewrite the laws, make this pack into something better. Lyra settled beside him on the bed. Helena, one of the rescued females, she's helping coordinate, teaching us about the experiments, the breeding programs, all of it. We're documenting everything so it can never be hidden again. And the other facilities? Vera said there were 6. We found 4 so far, all empty. Whatever Marcus planned, he either didn't finish it or the operation scattered when he died. She hesitated. But we'll keep looking, make sure no one else is being held. Kael was quiet for a long moment, then, I failed them. We all did. The entire pack. Every wolf who stayed silent, who looked away, who chose comfort over courage. Lyra's hand tightened on his. But we don't get to wallow in that guilt. We have to do better, be better, starting now. How? By listening to the ones we failed, by giving them power to shape what comes next, by admitting we don't have all the answers and being brave enough to ask for help. She met his eyes. By being the leaders they deserve, not the ones we think they need. He studied her face like he was seeing her for the first time. When did you get so wise? When I kissed a beggar and accidentally started a revolution. Despite everything, the pain, the exhaustion, the weight of what they'd witnessed, they both laughed. It felt like the first honest sound either of them had made in days. Over the following weeks, the pack transformed. The rescued females were given homes, resources, counseling. Some chose to stay, others left to join distant packs where the memories wouldn't follow them. Helena remained, becoming an unofficial advisor on matters of pack law and protection for the vulnerable. The confessed conspirators worked dawn to dusk, building and rebuilding, caring for those they'd helped harm. Some broke under the weight of their guilt. Most kept working, finding something like redemption in exhausted muscles and honest labor. The pack laws were rewritten in public sessions where everyone could contribute. No more forced bonds. No more mandatory mate selections. Females given equal say in pack decisions. Children protected by law from any form of exploitation. It wasn't perfect. Fights broke out over specific details. Old hierarchies fought to maintain power. Some wolves left, unable or unwilling to adapt to the changes. But slowly, painfully, the pack began to heal. Kael ruled differently now. Less from the throne, more from the ground level. Walking among pack members, listening to complaints, arbitrating disputes with Helena's council. He was still the Alpha King, still commanded absolute authority when needed. But he wielded it like a scalpel instead of a hammer. Lyra stood beside him through all of it, not as a silent mate, but as a voice of conscience, a reminder of what they'd fought to change. She had no official title, no formal power, but when she spoke, people listened. 6 months after the rescue, they held the first voluntary mating ceremony. It was nothing like the old rituals. No forced selections, no public claims, just wolves who'd chosen each other, standing before the pack to make their bonds official. Lyra and Kael renewed their own bond that night, not because they had to, but because they wanted everyone to see that even the king chose freely. They stood before the claiming stone, hands clasped, eyes locked. "I choose you," Kael said clearly. "Not because of bonds or duty or prophecy. I choose you because you make me better, because you showed me what real strength looks like, because I love you more than I thought I was capable of loving anyone." Lyra felt tears prick her eyes. "I choose you. Not because you're a king or an alpha or anything else. I choose you because you fight for what's right, even when it's hard, because you value mercy over revenge, because you're brave enough to change." She smiled. "And yeah, because I love you too, you reckless idiot." The crowd laughed. They kissed. Not their first, not their most desperate, but the most honest. A promise made in front of witnesses who would hold them accountable. When they pulled apart, the pack erupted in applause. Afterward, during the celebration, Thorn approached them with news. "Border Scouts found something," he said quietly. "Another facility, this one still operational." Kael's expression hardened. "How many?" "Unknown, but there's activity. Guards, possible prisoners." Lyra and Kael exchanged a look. Through the bond, she felt his determination, his bone-deep need to finish what they'd started. "We ride at dawn," Kael said. "My king, you've barely recovered. That's why we ride at dawn instead of now." Kael's hand found Lyra's. "Gather a team, the best we have. This ends, all of it. No more facilities, no more victims, no more nightmares Marcus left behind." Thorn bowed and withdrew. Kael turned to Lyra. "You don't have to come. This one could be worse than the last." "I know. You could stay here. Help Helena with the new laws. Be safe." "I could, but I won't." Lyra squeezed his hand. "We made a promise, remember? Together. Whatever comes, that's the deal." He pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. "You're insane. So you keep saying, and you keep proving it." He kissed her softly. "But I wouldn't have it any other way." They stood like that while the celebration continued around them, two wolves bound by choice instead of fate, preparing to ride into danger one more time because there were still people who needed saving. The work wasn't done, might never be done. There would always be another fight, another injustice, another nightmare to face, but they'd face it together, as equals, as partners. As wolves who'd learned that real strength came not from dominance, but from the courage to choose compassion even when violence was easier. The bond between them pulsed like a heartbeat, steady and sure. And in that moment, standing in the courtyard where she'd once kissed a beggar to escape fate, Lyra finally understood what freedom meant. Not the absence of bonds, but the power to choose which ones to forge and which ones to break. The power to build something better from the ruins of what came before. The power to love fiercely and fight harder and never ever give up on the belief that people could change. "Ready?" Kyle asked quietly. Lyra looked up at him, this king who'd been broken and rebuilt, who'd learned mercy in the wasteland and brought it home like a weapon. "Always," she said. They walked back into the celebration together, hand in hand, while above them the stars wheeled across an endless sky and the future stretched out uncertain and wild and absolutely worth fighting for. The revolution had begun with a kiss. It would continue with 1,000 small choices, made every day, by wolves brave enough to believe that strength and compassion weren't opposites, but partners. And Lyra Vance, the beta-rank wolf who'd outsmarted fate and accidentally toppled a kingdom, would be there for all of it. Not because she had to, but because she chose to. And that choice, that simple, terrifying, beautiful choice, made all the difference.